How you guys all doing today? Just getting my stuff all put together. Honestly, having a bit of an oddball day. Bad weather, kind of a chore day, honestly. Just putting together my life. Didn't even do a video for the day. I thought, you know what? I'm going to take the day off in regards to making videos or any of that kind of content. Got, what is that even? Got a little honey here. I'm a disaster. I'm a total disaster right now. Can't even express how big of a disaster I am at the moment. But such is life, right? How you doing, DM? Good to see you, bud. Yeah. Hello. Happy hump day to you. Happy hump day to you. Although for me, it's like completely nonsense, right? Like there's no such thing as hump day for me. Every day's a work day these days. So that's life, baby. That's life, right? You just you put in the time. You get in what you put out. I hope you're doing well, bud. I hope you're doing well. Kind of a calm day in terms of the news, honestly. It's that lull. There's a lull between Christmas and New Year's. Not much to talk about. Not much going on, honestly. And the big thing that keeps circling around is this CDC decision to cut the amount of time that people need to quarantine from 5 days to 10 days. Honestly, I see the end of COVID coming. I just see that the general populace. Hey, Major, how you doing, bud? The general populace is kind of over it. Like this COVID thing, people are getting to be like, you better have a goddamn serious reason to tell me that we're gonna go into lockdowns or something. And I think everybody's taken a look at this Omicron thing and just been like, no, like that's not gonna do it, dude. Like, oh, it's more transmissible, and oh sure, it's like slightly more deadly than the flu, but like I'm not gonna. I want to go to movies and shit. Like 2 years is enough, right? And I just think there's it's becoming a critical mass at this point. But this is the thing is I think that the media wants to keep the story going because it doesn't want to have to actually talk about other things. At this point, like this is an interesting thing to start talking about because I knew that this was going to come, right? There comes a moment where the populace wants to move on. The society, like the people want to move on. But the reality is that the COVID hysteria, or even if it's not the hysteria, the COVID story is a good way to make it so you don't have to talk about other things, right? And as long as people keep tuning into the story, right? As long as it keeps generating clicks, as long as people are like focusing on it in terms of their news consumption, they'll just keep doing that, right? But once the people turn and actually go and actually move on from it, you're going for full virtual school here in Newfoundland? Oh, wow. I mean, I genuinely don't know what to think. Like that really is what it comes down to with this COVID situation. Because on the one hand, I do think there are people in the conversation who want to do what's best, and and the reality is that nobody really knows what to do, right? And there really is a moment, and it's going to come, and it's going to come sooner rather than later, where people are just going to be like, fuck it, and they're going to just throw their hands up, and they're going to say, like, unless this thing starts killing people, like, en masse, unless this thing is, like, a very serious, absolutely everyone is going to die sort of situation, like, let's move on. Let's go. Like, I do think that is starting, even in liberal groups, even in the most well-meaning groups, right? You start talking to people about Omicron, especially. Like, Omicron had a real like, ooh, but then it kind of went nowhere, right? And if you're vaccinated, you're not really going to be hospitalized. It's not really a threat. Like, and I'm seeing lots of people beginning to wonder, like, well, we lived with like the common cold and the flu, like, for our entire lives. Like, if this thing is going to be just as like on that kind of a same level, or even a little bit worse, even, like, let's move on. Like, let's go. And And I don't know, like, I don't think that's unreasonable to say. I don't think it's unreasonable to say that so long as the evidence sort of shows that that's the case, right? Like, at what point is it just hysteria? And at what point is it like, okay, like where is the line between hysteria and reality and what is serious and what is true? Um, and of course, like this CDC decision is done as cynically as it possibly can be done, right? They're explicitly saying we have to, get society back and all this. But in a capitalist system, that means like let's get these peasants back to work. Like that's really what it's coming down to, and they want people like capitalism is a very weak system. It's a very, very weak system that it really does require a form of momentum. It requires like a big momentum, and if that momentum isn't there, then capitalism ceases to function, right? Which makes it different than other ruling systems. Like communism, for example, that communism doesn't rely on this momentum idea, right? That if, because in capitalism, the primary beneficiaries, the end point are these oligarchs, right? Well, they require people constantly moving and working and this constant momentum to fill their coffers, because they're not going to do any work or effort or anything like that. They're off fucking shooting themselves into space and shit. And so they have to get people back to work. They have to ramp the machine back up, or else the capitalist system really will start eating itself, right? And we're seeing that like the resources have to come from somewhere. And if they're not going to come from the big giant pile of wealth sitting in the corner, because there are these gates that have been put in the way that are protected by cops and lawyers and court systems and all this kind of stuff. And if we're not going to actually address that or actually get utilize this, right? If we're not actually going to have access to this, well, then we need the serfs, and we need the serfs to start working again. So that's really, I think, where the populace stands. And I mean, there's some truth to it, for sure. Hey, Harry, how you doing? Hey, John. Ghislaine Maxwell was found guilty as co-conspirator to Epstein. Big news for sure. I mean, how could she not be? I think it would be way bigger news if she wasn't. Like, the evidence is overwhelming. The enormous amount of testimonies, the enormous amount of evidence and like their defense was always extremely weak, right? It was always like, oh, they want to put Ghislaine on trial because they can't put Epstein on trial. It's like, no, dude, we want to put Ghislaine on trial because she is, exactly as you say, a co-conspirator, right? Like, she's doing the same shit that Epstein's doing. It's not like Epstein's doing the stuff and she's sitting in the corner being like, oh, I have no idea what's going on whatsoever. Like, no, that's total fucking bullshit. Way bigger story would be if they didn't name her a co-conspirator. And now comes the more interesting point. I'm sure Hillary Clinton is wringing her hands in glee in response to Maxwell's guilty verdict. What makes you say that, DM? What makes you say that? Because honestly, like, there's two ways this goes for Maxwell, right? Way number one is that the system just gives her a little slap on the wrist, just like they did to Epstein the first time they incarcerated him, right? Remember, Jeffrey Epstein was arrested and incarcerated for 2 years for pedophile sex trafficking, right? He got 2 years for pedophile sex trafficking, right? Which Epstein, like, he understood that was part of the game. Like, he understands that. That's what really breaks apart this idea that Epstein killed himself, right? Is that, like, Epstein knew that he was likely heading for just like a slap on the wrist. Like, he knew he was going to be well taken care of by the power system. It's just that the system obviously turned against him because the system began to see him as a threat. And part of the reason why I think that happened is because the first time that he was incarcerated, the media did its job properly, and the story was really buried in the bottom of the news. So no one knew who Epstein was. No one knew anything about the story. And so, pedophile sex trafficker gets arrested and incarcerated for 2 years and releases, and nobody knows about it. But the second time that he's arrested, it actually starts to break through in serious ways. And the most serious breakthroughs that happened were because people were highlighting how the media was covering for Jeffrey Epstein, right? There was this like really enormous moment where a news reporter was sitting there, was sitting in front of a camera during commercial, right? Or during like the pre-show or whatever. And she starts talking about Jeffrey Epstein and how she had like the whole story, like she had everything, but she was told by her higher ups to not talk about it, right? And it's this like really enormous indicting moment. And then this footage gets leaked and gets spread around. And that really was, in my view, the moment that the Jeffrey Epstein story really exploded, because people are so skeptical of the media these days, and for good reason. Like, if you watch Don't Look Up, they peg them, right? The media doesn't exist to tell the truth or to be honest or to have serious conversations. It exists to diffuse any threat to the power structure. That's the reason the media exists in North America. And it doesn't exist to inform, it doesn't exist to educate, it doesn't exist to do any of that. It literally exists so that if there is a threat to the power structure, how do we diffuse this and make it a non-story? And so once it came out very explicitly that the media was covering for Jeffrey Epstein, then it was like all eyes on Epstein. And then suddenly it became very difficult to believe that the narrative that Jeffrey Epstein was just going to get another slap on the wrist, like, probably not. Because now people were really looking at him. And then it starts coming out that, like, whoa, this guy has been already incarcerated one time. Whoa, this guy, like, Donald Trump and Bill Clinton were on those flights. Whoa, like, it was just like bombshell after bombshell after bombshell after bombshell. And it was obvious that the media was covering. It was obvious. Like, that's the whole thing about this Epstein story, is that it brought a lot of things that the public had been saying about the power structure in the media, and it just made it all obvious, right? Like, it's obvious what's going on. You really got to be nailing your head, like drooling out of your mouth, being like, the media is telling the truth. Like, that's who you are. If you read any of this like New York Times schlock and actually believe it when they say, like, yeah, Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide, like, you're either completely complicit, or you're just like you've got a nail in your head and you're a stupid moron. Like, there is no other position. You're either benefiting somehow, or you're just like, please just stop talking. Like, please let the adults continue talking. And this is the question, Harry, right? You think she'll name names now because there's so much focus, right? Because there's so much focus. And they can't kill her, right? Can you imagine? Like, what do you think would happen if they tried to kill her, right? Oh, Ghislaine Maxwell, yeah, she also committed suicide. I suspect that they'll probably just give her a sweetheart deal, right? I suspect that's what'll happen. And, like, the public will just eat it, as we always do. We'll just always eat it. And they'll protect her. She'll get like a 2-year, and the narrative will be something like, sure, she was a co-conspirator, but she wasn't the one doing all the stuff, you know, so it makes sense that she would get a reduced sentence, right? Like, that kind of dumb nonsense that, like, the real morons in the society will actually eat up. And no, I suspect very much that everything that's happening to Ghislaine Maxwell, she knew. Like, she knows what's happening. Like, the power structure and the people around her are communicating with her. They're gonna get her. She'll do like 5 years in like a minimum security prison. So she'll like literally like live in a mansion. She'll probably have servants. She won't be able to like go outside of the compound, but the compound itself will be like a tourist destination, right? Like, her life in prison will be better than 90% of the populace's life outside of prison. Like, that's just going to be a truism. Like, she's literally like the only thing that she's going to be restricted in terms of what she can do in her life is go outside of this particular wall. So like she won't be able to like, you know, find 12-year-old girls to have sex with. Like that's literally the only thing that she's going to not be able to do. And that'll be her position for like 5 years, and then she'll get released. And if she's smart, she'll probably just fade away into obscurity, right? But chances are good that like the power structure, because when you find an individual that's willing to do this work for you, right, that's a valuable asset, right? And there's also there's a ton of things tied in with Ghislaine Maxwell, right? Like there's like she likely does have access to lots of information, right? She's got access to lots of information on people like Donald Trump. Like she likely knows where the bodies are buried and where the documents are, right? Like she worked very closely with Jeffrey Epstein. So, but the reality is like they're gonna send her to a cushy little prison that's technically a prison, right? And she's gonna spend the time, the little slap on the wrist. Chances are really good that they're gonna give her like a decent sentence up front, right? So like just to show everybody how serious they are, they're going to be like 20 years life in prison, right? And then she'll get out like 5 years in good behavior, you know, all that kind of all that kind of normal stuff. And like I just that's how it's going to go. And the story will fade out of memory, right? That like, you know, 5 years from now, people will be like, oh yeah, whatever happened to Ghislaine Maxwell? Oh yeah, oh, and that'll be the extent of it, right? Like, any chance of this story actually cracking open and being like a much larger deal died with Jeffrey Epstein. For sure. For sure. That we're not going to get anything out of Maxwell. Like, it's just not going to happen. Unless something serious actually happens, unless there's actually like a real break in this, and there's something significant that occurs, I think that the powers that be are happy to cover this story up. They're obviously reporting on the Jeffrey Epstein assassination as a suicide. They're obviously going to just move forward as if that narrative is true and just forget about it. Like, that's it. And then everyone who brings up, like, hey, what about Jeffrey Epstein? People, they'll literally be like, well, what are you talking about? Ghislaine Maxwell went to jail for that. Right? The system works. Right? And then in another, like, 5-10 years, there'll be another pedophile sex ring that gets broken open. And the great irony of this whole story, in my view, is that, like, the very people, like the QAnon people, right? The right-wing QAnon Republicans, these are the guys that keep saying that there's a pedophile sex ring that the Democrats are involved with. And, like, when it comes to Jeffrey Epstein and all this, they seem completely dead silent. Like, that they're happy to double into like weird conspiracies like Pizzagate and like, but now they literally have like a pedophile sex ring that's actually here and right in front of you that Bill Clinton was a part of, right? That like Bill Gates was a part of, and they just seem and I think it's because it's actually real. Right? That like these people don't seem actually invested in doing something unless it's actually fake. So that's the story as far as I'm concerned. Like it's obviously a cover. Like and all of the things that I say on this channel are made completely obvious because of the Jeffrey Epstein Ghislaine Maxwell story. Like these people are psychopaths. They are having sex with children. They are rapists who go around kidnapping people and bringing them to an island to imprison. Like, they're doing that. That is what that story is. Like, and yet we're all just supposed to be like, la, 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 la. Like, I look at a movie like Don't Look Up, and I think Don't Look Up made made Meryl Streep and Jonah Hill, I think they let them off the hook in many ways. That they were like unrepentant, like they were not good people, but they weren't like rapists and like pedophiles, You know, like the way that someone like Donald Trump and Bill Clinton are. You know. Yeah, Don't Look Up is pretty good. I was getting anxiety from the people not listening to the astronomers. I have something to say on that on that particular point, but let's move on to the number draw. Let's just do the number draw, and then let's do the song, and then we'll get into it. I'm going with, somebody already said, what did you say here? You said something funky. 5?
Here we go for today's number.
8.
It's December 29,
I'm going
2021.
I'm going with an 8.
10 balls.
So we got a 3, we got a 2.
Each ball has
Major,
a number.
we're together, Major.
Numbers 1 through 10. Swirl the numbers.
I love it. Hey, Eziel, how you doing, bud?
Pick a number.
Pick a number. Here we go. Here we go. Come on.
Today's number is 2.
Dos. So both DM and Ezial hitting the 2. Good stuff. What will tomorrow's number be? Good question. Is it going to be 2 or is it going to be 12? It's 12. What song is 12? Song number 12. Adgooch. How's that for a name? Here's one I haven't played in a while. Hey, brother. Glad to see you're doing okay. Hey, brother. Anytime anybody says, hey, brother, to me, I immediately go like, hey, brother. Like it's like Macho Man Randy Savage. We're going in there and we're gonna crush their heads with our bones. Oh, yeah. Dig it. All right. Have you noticed how stupid this whole place is? A fiction we write as we go. Smile real big, earn your food and a home, so we can all put on a show. Hey, how are you? But I don't really care. A coffee, 2 milk, and a scone. Then ask the bank if that's okay with them. Then goodbye, now leave me alone. This isn't life. This isn't life. A fantasy made just to pass the day. This isn't life. Billions of years since the Big Bang have gone, just to get us here. The earth threw us up and we don't know why. Don't worry, just drink a beer. This isn't life. This isn't life. A fantasy made just to pass the days. This isn't life. I'm too tired to think, I'll just have a drink to wake up and do it again. Then I'll ask, what was the point? What happened just then? When I finally meet my end. This isn't life. This isn't life. A fantasy made just to pass the days. This isn't life. That's more like an indie song, this one. This one's this is like you can picture like somebody doing like a story about like someone working in a cafe, and just like a montage of them like closing up the store, everything's kind of going wrong for them, and just this like This Isn't Life playing in the background while they, spend their whole life grinding away. Perhaps they're trying to pursue something that they care about, trying to breathe life into this thing. And that's what I think that song is about. Like, do we really think that this like illusionary edifice that we have created is life? Like, really? Do we honestly believe that like standing in a cafe or even coming into a cafe and like getting your little dumb drinks and then walking around and like going and staring into screens and doing stupid jobs that nobody actually cares about? Do we honestly believe that this is the apex of life? I don't. Like, I sincerely don't. That we've like fallen prey to an illusion that we're trying to disenchant. We're trying to chase it away. We're trying to banish it. And the number one way that we can start to banish it is to stop participating in it. And you can see the capitalist system working against it. You can see how they're trying to reassert the illusion, right? To pretend as though, oh yeah, capitalism's the best system and all this kind of stuff. But once you understand that it's just an illusion, once you understand that like you literally are better off just like staring at a cloud. Like, really. Like, you are closer to experiencing the realities of life just by sitting in a field staring at a cloud than you are to engage in any of this. This false nonsense, this false existence where like no one is connected to anything. No, everyone is alienated from everything. You are a commodity. Like, it's nonsense. It's complete and total nonsense. And the number one thing that we can do to actually banish this illusion and actually begin to live in a real place where real things happen is to stop participating in the illusion. Like, stop engaging in it. And again, this comes back to my kind of central thesis and my central point. Like, we have to surround the halls of power. We have to end this nonsense. Because it is nonsense what we're doing. We're like watching the comet come, right? And that's the consequence of living in of being trained to accept an illusion as reality. That when someone says don't look up, you go, oh, okay. Right? Just live in the illusion. And the scary thing about what's going on, especially in North America, is that huge segments of the populace, like the Christian evangelicals, like these guys are like as nihilist as it can get. It doesn't get more nihilist than the Christian evangelicals. Like, these guys are genuinely saying that life will be better when we're dead, right? So don't bother improving life now. Don't bother trying to make things better now for the people who exist in the world and are here now, right? Because things will, if they do good here, then things will be better when they die, right? If you're a Christian evangelical, this is what you believe. And there's also like, there's no reason to prevent an apocalypse from occurring, because according to the Christian doctrine, an apocalypse is exactly what you want, right? If you're an evangelical Christian, the apocalypse means Christ is coming back. So it's actually a net good for you, right? And if you've actually deluded yourself into believing this illusion, right, that when the apocalypse occurs, Christ will come back and then all the good Christians will be rewarded and all the, non-white, non-Christians will be sent to hell for all eternity. Then why would you bother? Like, if you genuinely believed that when the comet hits, things will be better, why would you ever even attempt to prevent it, right? And there are huge sections of the American populace, including people who are in major positions of power. People like Mike Pence, right? Like the vice president of the United States, the former vice president of the United States. Like, he's a true believer. Like, he truly believes these things. Like, why would you ever even bother to attempt to do it? Things will be better after the comet hits, right? Things will be better after the wildfires happen, after the famines happen, after all that happens, right? This is just the will of God, and then Jesus Christ will come back. We know it because we've got a book that says so. Like, if you believe the book of Revelations. And there's a reason why the Orthodox Church actually took the book of Revelations out, right? The book of Revelations is actually a fairly contentious book in Christian circles. Like, the Orthodox Church actually takes the book of Revelations out of the book because they're like, yeah, this is going to be used for dumb shit. Like, this is dumb. Like, it's at best, it's like a fucking, like, mushroom based, like, hallucination, right? Christ's words and amendments by commentators. I don't know if I understand the comment, Harry. Sorry. Anyhow. So, speaking of Don't Look Up, here is somebody actually writing something. Don't look up should enrage you. I just spent the last 20 minutes sobbing on my couch through the end of the new Netflix movie Don't Look Up. It was written by two folks, one of which is David Sirota. David was Bernie Sanders' speechwriter during his 2020 campaign. Holy fuck, I've never felt so angry. Our leaders have failed us. The scientific community is screaming about climate change. Large regions of the tropics will be uninhabitable soon. But are we doing anything about it? No. Billionaires like Gates, Elon Musk, and hundreds of old fucks you never heard of are laughing all the way to the bank. They are willing to sacrifice workers, even entire countries, for the imaginary thing we call money. Money doesn't exist. We made it up. Climate change and pollution do exist. We cannot continue to stand by as our home is ravaged for fake people points. We deserve clean air and water. They have no right to do that to us. The economy is a sham. We are all slaves. Workers of the world, stop this madness. We control our fate, but we have to look up. We have to see the forest for the trees. We have to say enough is enough. We have to prevent our own destruction. Jobs are anti-humanity. We must save ourselves. Stop participating in this system. Quit your job. If you can't quit your job, organize a strike. If you can't organize a strike, sabotage your workplace. These are the only tools we have left to us as our leadership completely abandons us. And it is a complete abandonment. There is not a single person in a single position of power who genuinely cares about this issue. It is all illusionary. Justin Trudeau does not give a fuck at all. He doesn't care, right? He knows how to elude and he knows how to present, right? That's why I actually think, like, again, like, I think the leader that's presented in Don't Look Up is actually, like, fairly low level in regards to their malevolence. That someone like Justin Trudeau is an extraordinarily malevolent figure because he is blatantly, directly in front of your face lying to you about this. That at least in Don't Look Up, there was some kind of an understanding. Like, there was always a plan, right? That's the thing, is that there was always a plan. Justin Trudeau has no plan. He's not interested in a plan. He's interested in convincing you that he has a plan, right? That and in many ways, he is a much more malevolent and a duplicitous figure than the leader in Don't Look Up. That the leader in Don't Look Up is more or less just sort of a goof, just kind of a dope, right? Like not necessarily like overtly malevolent, but just sort of deluded and arrogant, believing that this is going to work out. Whereas someone like Justin Trudeau, like, I don't think Justin Trudeau has a belief, like genuinely, like and I don't think it matters to him. I literally think he just says what needs to be said to the people so that they will continue to elect him. And if that means telling overt, insane level lies, such as Don't Look Up, he will. He will. Like, Trudeau has told massive lies regarding his intention to combat climate change. Like, enormous, massive, like, Nazi level lies. And we should never let him off the hook for it. Like, we should never let him off the hook for it. Yep, billionaire imperialism. Marx was right. Of course Marx was right, right? He's a scientist. I'm going through David Harvey. Do I have it here? There's a fellow by the name of David Harvey on YouTube. Yeah, here he is. He has been doing lectures on Marx for 40 years. He's a professor that has been doing lectures on Marx, and I have been listening to his lectures. And if you want just like a very accessible, it's long, don't get me wrong, like it's full scale university lectures. But if you want to dive into it, David Harvey, good place to be. Good place to be. He really knows his stuff. He really knows his business. And I mean, if you want to, I mean, I always recommend read Capital, but it's quite dense and quite dry. And so having someone like David Harvey to be your guide through that process is useful. And it's on YouTube. It's completely David Harvey Capital Volume 1. Type that in. And you'll find him. You'll find him. Worthwhile. Can Trudeau resign already? I don't know, Vince. Good to see you, though, bud. How is he still PM? Because we keep voting for him. There's no way he is PM until 2025. No way. 2023, I think, is the last year he'll be PM. Don't discount two important factors. Factor number one, the narcissism of Justin Trudeau. Like, he doesn't have shame, right? He doesn't have shame. Like, that doesn't exist. Like, he's literally funding neo-Nazi groups. Like, he doesn't have, like, shame. If you confront him with his duplicitous lies, he'll just do like a little smirk at you and just like a little like, okay, well, we'll just have to agree to disagree, right? Like, he doesn't have shame. He doesn't go home and like cry about these things to his wife. So he's not going to resign. And then the gullibility of the populace. Like, people still actually do believe, for whatever reason, that Justin Trudeau is interested in preventing this climate change catastrophe. Like, he isn't at all. Like, even a little. Like, even a little. He's just interested in convincing you that he's interested in it. Because he knows that that's what you're interested in. And if he can convince you that he's interested in it, then you'll vote for him. Even though it's obvious that he doesn't give a shit at all. Like, at all. Justin Trudeau has given more subsidies and has done more work on behalf of the fossil fuel industry than Stephen Harper did. By a lot. Like, it's by like not small measures, right? Meanwhile, Hassan and Vosh are considered left. Yeah, I know, right? Well, Hassan is like more of a leftist, but more and more I'm beginning to see that like he has some pretty major gaps in his knowledge base. But anytime I listen to him, I feel like he is on the left of the conversation. Vosh is just a liberal imperialist, like pretty straightforwardly. So, and any sense that Vosh is left is like, what? If somebody was to say to me that Vosh is a leftist, I'd be like, oh, so you're just illiterate. Like, you just don't know what these terms actually mean. The clueless rubes will keep him in power till 2050, yet the year of net zero, and then be like, wait a minute, we're still not at net zero. What? I want to speak to the manager. Like, that's what's going to happen. I wonder when we will get some Trudeau leaks regarding his corruption like they did with Harper. Doubt it, though. Well, I mean, the media does a really good job at covering for Trudeau, right? That, like the blackface scandal. They did a really good job of covering for Trudeau during the blackface scandal, right? That they had, like, major celebrities coming out and defending him. They had... they really downplayed the actual blackface and focused really heavily on the Aladdin costume, right? Which what is a bit more complex in regards to its positioning. Like, okay, what's the difference between blackface and like a costume and all of this? And so even adding that layer of confusion into the conversation helps Trudeau an awful lot. Like, if it came out that Stephen Harper was doing blackface, that would have been the end of his career. Like, for real. Hey, Islam, how you doing? Good to see you. Good to see you too, Matthias. So, like, no, the media is doing everything it can to cover for Trudeau, for sure. Like, the very fact that they're not reporting on his arming and funding of Nazi troops in Ukraine. Like, I mean, come on. This is a real slam dunk no-brainer story. Like, this should be front page news on the Globe and Mail, for sure. Like, for sure. Global television should be talking about it. It should be considered a major talking point. Like, the prime minister of our country is arming and funding neo-Nazi groups. That's a major story. Like, that's a major, major story. And it's just dead silence. Dead silence. So they're obviously covering for him. Just like they cover for Jeffrey Epstein, right? Like, the media is perfectly complicit in all of this. And when the comet hits, they'll fucking die too. And when they die, they'll go off and be drunk in a bar just like in the movie, right? Because they have no, like, moral center or even self-interest, like self-preservation, right? Have you seen Dr. Vernon Coleman on Brand New Tube? We're actually winning. I don't know who this is, and I don't know what Brand New Tube is. There's many comments about a surge in Guy Fawkes mask, I assume, sales, and gunpowder is trending in internet searches. I gotta tell you, that's a really dumb idea. It's a really dumb idea to use the internet to try to figure out how to make bombs and weapons and stuff. Like, they will figure you out. Like, they will. Don't use the internet for that shit. Like, they'll sniff you out. Like, this guy is searching how to make pipe bombs. Wonder what he's doing, right? Oh, this guy just bought a copy of the Anarchist Cookbook. Wonder what he's doing, right? Like, don't use the internet to discover this shit. Like, the internet's a useful research tool if you use it for that, but if you start researching how to blow shit up, they're gonna figure you out, and they're gonna figure you out pretty fast, honestly. Like, there are ways to find these resources, like, without leaving a cookie trail, without being online, right? Yeah, big thumbs up on David Harvey. Excellent source of information. Yeah. No, David Harvey's great. He is great. More upset by the casual cynicism of the left than the actual violence of the right. Here we are. Yeah, I know, right? Like, that's a Justin Trudeau statement right there, right? Like, and it really just, that when he said that, it really just shows you where he stands, right? It shows you where Justin Trudeau is. Like, that he can accept the violence and the white supremacy on the right because it doesn't affect him, right? He doesn't actually care about that. He doesn't actually care about the violence that comes out of the right because he knows it isn't really directed at him and he knows it's not going to affect him, right? What is going to affect him? Well, the truth about who he is, right? And where is that truth coming from? It's coming from people like me. It's coming from the far left. From people who are like, oh, hey, this guy is like a far-right, neo-Nazi supporting, blackface wearing liar, right? Like, and I genuinely don't understand why people are still with him. I mean, the only thing that makes any sense whatsoever is that Canadians are so racist that they can overlook his racism and their unwillingness to vote for a guy with a turban, right? But, like, get over it. You know, there just comes a point where I got to be like, look, get over it, right? This is a life or death struggle. This guy is not doing what needs to be done in regards to the climate change conversation. Like, yep, just watch Don't Look Up. It succinctly portrays the absurdity of capitalism in the face of death. Yep. And Don't Look Up, in my view, is going to become like a central, like literally people will be like, and then the comet hits, right? And that's just going to be, it's going to become like a shorthand for everything we're describing. That we don't need to like have a big long debate or a big long discussion, or even, we don't even need to educate people anymore. Like I say, like if you've got like conservative family members or something, just be like, hey, there's this Leonardo DiCaprio. You know Leonardo DiCaprio, right? The hunk from Titanic. Oh yeah, I loved Leonardo DiCaprio. Well, he's got a new one. It's called Don't Look Up. It's a disaster movie, right? Comet towards Earth. Haha, waka waka. Sit down, watch the film. Film ends. The comet is climate change. And then you can have, I think, a genuine conversation. Because it shorthands everything, right? And what I think is the brilliance of the film is that it really sidesteps like the Democrat-liberal or the Democrat-Republican conversation. And I actually say to people, if you're having a conversation about Don't Look Up and you're talking to somebody who's like your political adversary or something, and they start getting into that particular conversation, just go, yeah, and get them through all of that, and just do not push back, do not fight back, none of that. Yeah, oh yeah, let's go Brandon. Yeah, oh yeah, because honestly, the stuff that they're saying is probably somewhat accurate anyway, right? If they're like a Trumper that hates Hillary, like everything they say about Hillary is probably true, frankly. So just don't push back. And then once they get that out of the way, right, you can focus on what matters, which is, hey, there's a comet coming, you notice? What are we going to do about the comet? And so that film operates as a shorthand, right? That instead of needing to spend weeks and weeks and weeks to like drill it into people and like find ways to do it, like literally a 2-hour movie. Can you get these people to sit down and watch a 2-hour movie with like Leonardo DiCaprio and Jennifer Lawrence and Meryl Streep and Cate Blanchett and Tyler Perry? Like this movie is sellable. You can get literally anyone to sit down and watch this movie. Like, I strongly believe it. Like, and don't tell them that it's like an allegory for climate change or any of that. Just straight up, like, it's a disaster movie about a comet coming towards Earth, and all these famous actors are in it. And they're going to be like, wow, okay, cool. Haha, yeah, let's get the popcorn. Nope. And then when the film ends and you're fucking, like, weeping, like, maybe they'll actually join in. Because that's the true power of Don't Look Up, and the real reason why these capitalists have been working so hard to destroy the arts in this society is because the arts can change your perception of reality in a very short period of time. In an extremely short period of time, you can go from being like an overt white supremacist racist to putting the Klan hood down. You can do that. That does happen, right? And the arts have the power to do that, and the humanities have the power to do that, which is why it needs to be destroyed from the capitalist perspective. Because eventually artists will create a piece of art that is so powerful that people will realize, oh, we can just walk away from capitalism. We literally can just walk away from it and just say, get fucked as a people. And so it has to be destroyed. And like really think about the effort that it has taken to get this film made, right? This film, Don't Look Up, like it requires like Academy Award winners, people who are extremely well respected, Meryl Streep, Cate Blanchett, right? Like this is a major, this film is the culmination of many of these artists' entire careers. And like that's what it's taking in order to even take a shot at this. Because they're working so hard to destroy the arts and to destroy anybody to push back or fight back. Just watched the year-end interview CBC Rosie did with Trudeau. Yeah, I've got something on that right here. She was giddy as a schoolgirl with Trudeau. She was impressed with his sparkle socks. Exactly, right? Like, just exactly the shit that you'd see in Don't Look Up. Like, Cate Blanchett's character just interviewed Justin Trudeau, and they tee-heed about sparkle socks and shit. They are also camped outside a few politicians' houses. Well, that's what you got to do. We should be doing that permanently. Like, permanent encampments in front of these people's houses. Like, there's just nothing else to do. Yeah, us Americans are always looking up, John. Up our own rear ends, that is. Seems to be the case. Seems to be the case. I think you would really like the movie. It's an allegory for climate change. Best. Oh, yeah, I've definitely seen it. Everybody should see it. We just got back from a walk after sunset, shorts and t-shirt. I was sweating. It's 2 days before New Year's Eve. Yeah. Have we gotten anyone saying Don't Look Up is about communism yet? Not yet. I'll be curious to see how the death cult responds. Right? Like your Shapiros and all this. Like, how's the death cult going to respond? One of the shots that I've heard people I've heard grumblings on is people saying that the movie is smug. That there's a smugness about the movie. And it's like, nah, I wouldn't say that movie's smug. Angry. I think there's a lot of anger in that movie. Like righteous fury. Yeah, people should be able to see it in their daily lives. Yeah. Well, just look up. Like, just fucking look up. Like, look around. According to my son, who's mixed race, I can still be racist. Shows the mind warping he's been exposed to daily. Well, I'm honestly not going to get into it, dude. It's a very complex issue. Race and racism is a very difficult issue. And honestly, your son is probably just trying to get in your face. How old's your son? I bet your son is, what, 14? Saying that shit? I bet he's trying to just get into you. Right? Kids. Total assholes. I know, Onward, but unfortunately there are a lot of people still in denial. Yeah. Clearly, Don't Look Up is about the threat of critical race theory. One of my favorite parts of the film is the guy with the pin that pointed up, down, and he's like, can't we all just get along? Yeah, exactly. And he's the director of like an actual disaster film that is about a comet hitting Earth. Total devastation, right? Yeah, I knew it. 14. What'd I tell you, Ad Gooch? What'd I tell you, bud? All right. Speaking of Justin Trudeau, right? So this is I found this interesting in regards to their conversation about Beijing, right? Beijing says Canada-China relations at a crossroad after Trudeau's coercive diplomacy comment. So what's so funny about this? Let's just play the clip, and there's also like a news thing at the bottom here. It's only a minute.
What we saw and what we do see is that when like-minded countries pull together, when we align, when we coordinate, when we show a united front, because one of the challenges that we've had as a Western world is that we compete with each other. We're trying to say, oh, could we get better access for Canadian beef than Australian beef to this country or that market? There's been a bit of competition amongst friends, because we're capitalist democracies, on trying to do well, especially given the extraordinary economic opportunity of the rising Chinese middle class. So how do we access that? Well, we've been competing, and China has been, from time to time, very cleverly playing us off each other in a open market competitive way. We need to do a better job of working together and standing strong so that China can't, play the angles and divide us one against the other. And quite frankly, on the issue of arbitrary detentions, where we saw dozens upon dozens of countries signing on to this in a very real way, declaring that no, coercive diplomacy is not all right. Those kinds of initiatives do make a difference.
So this sort of word salad of nonsense is actually worth really unpacking. But of course, the computer is not cooperating with me. Go away. Go away. Go away. All right. China's foreign ministry says relations with Canada stand at a crossroads after Prime Minister Justin Trudeau accused Beijing of engaging in coercive diplomacy. Speaking to media outlets on December 27th, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Zhao Lijuan accused Trudeau of misunderstanding and miscalculating Canada's approach to Beijing. Zhao was responding to Trudeau's comments in a year-end interview with Global News, where the Prime Minister suggested Beijing was playing democratic countries off one another and urged a united front against China's coercive diplomacy. Does Canada see China as a partner or a rival? This is a fundamental question bearing on the future of bilateral ties that Canada must think through, Zhao said, prompted by a question from state broadcaster China Central Television. China attaches importance to relations with Canada and holds that we should grow bilateral ties on the basis of mutual respect, equality, and mutual benefit. Canada should replace its wrong perception of China with an objective and rational view. Adopt a positive and pragmatic China policy, work with the Chinese side in line the same direction, and bring bilateral relations back into the right track of development. Speaking to Global News Ottawa Bureau Chief Mercedes Stephenson earlier this month, Trudeau said the Chinese Communist government has used its economic heft to very cleverly play democracies off one another. I mean, isn't that just using the free market? Isn't that just free market capitalism, baby? Chaos brings order, right? Isn't that the whole idea? Like, if America fucks over a country in order to get its benefit, nobody says shit. But if China does something similar, suddenly, oh, they're very cleverly playing democracies off one another. Like, China, and I say this over and over again, man, like, China's a 4,000-year-old civilization that has written, like, brilliant tracts on how to govern and how to rule and how to go to war and how to do all this shit. Like, the people that are ruling China currently are like the apex of a system that is designed to groom governors. Like, the Western world is not ready. Like, it's not ready to face someone like China. If they want to go up against something like China, they're not ready for it. They sincerely do not know what they're getting into. They don't know what they're doing. Like, and you can see how, like, when Deng opened up China to foreign markets, the Western world basically arrogantly proclaimed victory and said, oh yeah, capitalism wins again, right? And then China turns itself into a complete monster, right? And I don't mean like an evil monster. I mean like just a gigantic force. And how does it do it? By taking the money it makes from foreign enterprises and foreign markets and actually investing in its own society. Like, something that we have not done in 40 years here in America and North America. Like, we haven't reinvested in society in 40 years, and we don't give a fuck. Be homeless, get fucked, right? That's essentially our response. Just get fucked. And if you say that to your populace, get fucked, well, guess what? You're going to fall behind. Big time. Big time. Right? If all you're going to do is blame people for when the system fails them, well, then you're never going to build anything that's going to compete against a society that actually structures its society to be like, oh, you've fallen over? Here. Oh, you're homeless? Here's a house. Right? Like, you're not going to compete. And the reason why Trudeau is calling, right, for like a united front right now is in my view based almost entirely on just white supremacist lines, right? All the white nations need to get together and fight against the yellow man is essentially what we're saying now. And like, we compete with each other. Well, yeah, like, because chaos brings order, right? That the way to organize complex societies is just to let chaos reign, right? We've been competing, and China has been from time to time very cleverly playing us off each other in an open market competitive way. So China's been playing the game that you've been playing, but they've been doing it better. It's essentially an admission, right? Like, because China actually has something called planning, right? Where it actually makes a plan and comes together with an idea of how to move forward for the benefit of its own people using something called planning, which we don't do. We're completely disinterested in planning, right? Free market capitalism, the freer the market, the freer the people, let chaos reign, chaos brings order, right? We need to do a better job of working together and standing strong so China can't, play the angles and divide us one against the other. Very much explicitly, like, we need to do a better job of working together. So exclude China. Why? Why? Exactly. Like, why can't China be part of this cooperative? Why do we need this united front against China? Why can't it be that, oh, here's all these forces and we need to all work together and cooperate? Like, why isn't Trudeau saying we need to take a more cooperative spirit together instead of competing against one another the way that we do in this chaos brings order system of free market capitalism? We need to be more cooperative and actually work together. No, instead of that, they're just calling for unity, which is literally like the white nations, the old allies, NATO, right? Forming up, stand strong so China can't, play the angles and divide us one against the other. And this is essentially Trudeau confirming what I have always said on this channel, which is that the North American economies, that's Canada, that's America, are very worried that the European economies are going to shift towards China, right? That's Germany, that's Italy, right? Never forget this AUKUS deal that the Americans made. Germany and Italy did not go along with it. Straight up, they did not go along with it. So there are fissures appearing, there are cracks. And should China suddenly become Germany's number one trading partner, which it likely will because it's smarter at this game and it knows better what it's doing, Germany's going to start looking at America, especially as America elects yet another Republican president who yet again denies the existence of climate change and yet again seeks this path of destroying the world, right? Like, Germany experienced a flood as major as the flooding that happened in British Columbia. Like, Germany is experiencing consequences from climate change. And you're telling me that we are going to tie our wagon to a literal fascist who is obviously a lunatic, who thinks that climate change isn't real, and is just going to let the comet hit the Earth. This is literally what you're saying to me right now? And Trudeau is standing up saying, we all need to work against China. Like, it's not going to happen. The only reason Trudeau is saying this is because he's worried that it is going to happen. And I mean, he's too weak and pathetic to actually do anything about it. Like, he's such a non-leader, right? Trudeau's comments were a marked departure from the Liberal leader's optimism 6 years ago that Canada could expand trading relationships with the world's second largest economy, but the Prime Minister said President Xi Jinping's China today is no longer the China that we thought about 10 years ago or even 5 years ago in some ways. Well, yeah, because 10 years ago, people were still caught in the delusion of the Obama years, right? The illusion that, yeah, America is improving and increasing and we're going to be the superpower we always were. And then along came Donald Trump and everybody kind of shook that up. And then suddenly over those years, right, over the Obama-Trump years, like, what did China do? Like, what the Americans thought that the Chinese rulers were going to do is that they thought the Chinese rulers were going to act like our rulers do, which is as psychopaths do, right? They thought that, like, Deng and Xi Jinping and all these guys were psychopaths the way that they are. Right? And they thought that they were going to impoverish their society for their own benefit, create massive wealth inequality, destroy entire societies, ensure that poverty spreads, that education rates drop, enslave massive sections of the society to a wage slave system. That's literally what they thought was going to happen. And instead of that, China turned around and actually created a society worth living in, right? That even something as basic, Even something as basic as the creation of the Belt and Road Initiative, or the creation of the internal rail system, which they did from 2008 to today, so over 12 years, right? 13 years, they built rail, literally no rail, to high-speed 300-kilometer rail that goes throughout the entire country. 12 years. We've never done anything even close to that. I think that the closest thing that we've ever done is probably the highway system that we built in like the 50s, right? And so, of course, Trudeau is turning around and saying, yeah, China's no longer the China we thought about 10 years ago, because they're starting to recognize that China isn't psychotic, right? They're not psychotic like we are. They actually do stuff for their own citizens. They actually try to eliminate poverty. They actually try to increase literacy rates. They actually try to improve the society in some meager, tiny way, right? Which we simply don't. Like, we simply don't. And it's obvious. Like, it's very obvious. And there's a reason why we're in this sharp decline. And as Trudeau is standing up saying, we have to form a united front against this Chinese threat, well, the Germans and the Italians are kind of looking at America being like, really? Like, this looks pretty Mussolini Hitler. Like, this looks pretty Hitler Mussolini over here. And then, of course, this ridiculous thing that Trudeau says, which is that the diplomatic coercion, right? This is just delusional propaganda. Like, literally, the United States had Canada kidnap a Chinese citizen and put them in prison, and so China turned around and grabbed 2 spies, and then there was an exchange. That's the whole story. And this is coercive diplomacy. How dare they fight back? They should have just let us kidnap that Chinese citizen. Like, that's literally what he's saying. How dare they fight back? Don't they know that white people are more powerful? That white people are supposed to be able to do what they want? Like, the decline that is coming for America and the decline that is coming for Canada because we've linked ourselves to America is going to be significant. It's going to be significant. The housing bubble, the housing market that we're in alone ensures that the cities are going to be gutted. Like, this place is going to turn into like a squalid nothing. Like, we're not actually achieving anything. We're not doing anything. We're not improving people's lives. We're not creating any programs. We're not creating any policies. We're not creating any. We're not creating a society that's worth living in. We're not educating people. We're not attempting to educate people. And the people we are educating, we're funneling into worthless jobs like how to make lighter earbuds or whatever, right? Like how to get a type of lipstick that doesn't come off when you kiss someone, right? How to get a hair dye that you can wash out, or that doesn't wash out. Like, these are the sorts of like narcissistic research projects that we're having people focus on. We're not interested in discovering anything or learning anything or revealing anything or doing anything meaningful. We're just interested in bullshit, basically. We're not even interested in having serious conversations about what it is to live in the world, right? Well, you got a degree in the humanities? No wonder you're so poor. Like, that's the attitude. Like, no wonder we're such a shithole. Like, and it's going to get way worse. It's going to get way, 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 way worse. Like, way worse. Like, America has 600,000 homeless right now. Okay. Double it. Triple it. Like, we are going towards, like, the peak Great Depression. And it just seems like we're just happy about it, honestly. Seems like we keep voting for it. We keep supporting it. We keep thinking, yeah, this is the greatest country in the world. Right? We're just a very gullible and stupid people, frankly. And Trudeau asked foreign minister to work with G7 nations and like-minded partners. What does that mean? Like-minded partners. Like-minded in what regard? In what way? To do what? For what purpose? To what end? Like-minded. I'd really like that to be peeled apart a little bit. Like, does like-minded mean just like slavers? Is that what that means? Seems like, yeah, you like me believe that societies should be slave societies that enslave people to a market dominated by billionaires. Oh, we thought the Chinese were going to do that, but then they didn't. Drat. Well, now they're a threat because they're actually doing stuff and building stuff and showing that their system is actually a more effective economic system. Right? Like, hard to fight back against this claim, incidentally, that like China has built like what has happened in China is an economic miracle. If 1/10 of what is happening in China today was happening in America, we would be screaming over the moon about it. We would be like shooting guns into the air and shouting USA, USA. If 1/10 of what is happening in China was happening here today. But we're just not interested. We're literally passing like meaningless legislation to funnel money into offshore accounts for developers who then put up infrastructure that falls over in 5 years. Like we are an embarrassing people, and embarrassing is the word. And what gets super cringe about it is that we keep talking as if we're not. Like we keep talking as if we're still the greatest. We're the greatest country in the world. USA, USA. You and everybody else in the entire world is like looking at the USA being like okay. The only road the USA has built in the last 20 years was in Afghanistan, and now it belongs to the Taliban. Yeah, exactly. Let's see what you guys have been chattering about. That NPR voice is like butter. The West compete with each other in stealing the resources from third world countries and leaving them starving. Yeah, exactly. Well, and it's like a crab in a bucket situation, right? Instead of working with each other to try to like collectively build each other's communities up, it's this constant backbiting. It's this constant underhandedness and this constant like shenaniganry. With the United States constantly getting into positions where it literally says, if you don't do what we say, we'll try to coup your government, like we did in Ukraine, like we attempted to do in Venezuela, like we did in Chile, like we did all throughout South America. Like the Americans are unhinged psychopaths, like really obviously, and if a person was to stand up and try to say that they're not unhinged psychopaths, I'd be like, either you're a fucking moron. Like, nail in the forehead, moron. Or somehow you're benefiting from the fact that they're psychopaths. So, which is it? You get to pick. Because we're a capitalist democracy, Trudeau slurps. What a vampire. I'm surprised he's allowed to be out during the day. Yeah. I mean, he is essentially just a walking haircut, right? Like, he'd actually be way more impressive if he was a vampire. Actually. No, Trudeau is not a vampire. Like that's way too impressive. He's like a ghoul. Like what is it? Renfrew. No. What was the name of Dracula's sidekick? Yeah, here we go. Yeah, Renfield. What is Renfield called? No, that's not what I'm looking for. What is Dracula's? So Renfield, right? Like, he's like the classic. He's like the servant of Dracula who's in the thrall of Dracula, and there's a name for something like this. Like there's a name for like a creature or a human that becomes in thrall of the monster itself. And that's essentially what Trudeau is. Like, Trudeau's not a vampire, right? He's not nearly impressive enough to be a vampire. He doesn't make decisions. He doesn't have thoughts or ideas. He has no ambition outside of being the Prime Minister of Canada. He's not actually interested in doing things. That if suddenly the United States empire, if suddenly the death cult said to Trudeau, hey, we need you to build a high-speed rail from Toronto to Montreal, and we need it done ASAP. Come on, snap, snap, snap. He'd do it. And he'd be like, yeah, I'm the greatest person alive. But if while he was doing it, they told him to stop, he would. Right? Like, he's just a servant. Like, he's not in a position of authority, or at least he's not using his power for anything. Like, that's what makes him so pathetic. Right? Like, and that's the reason why calling him a vampire is way too much. Like, he's too pathetic to be a vampire, right? He's more like somebody like Renfield, who's just like, yes, master. Yes, of course, master. Oh, you'd like me to enslave another society? Yes, master, I am concerned. The town of Lytton did burn down. So, yes, sir, of course, sir. I won't bring it up again, sir. Yes, sir. That's Trudeau. Like, that's Trudeau. He's not a fucking vampire. He's nowhere near as impressive enough to be a vampire. He's just a loser servant. Like, somebody that if suddenly Trudeau died, there'd just be another one of them. Right? He's not central to anything. He's not important. He's not using his power for anything. And I say this all the time about Trudeau. Like, it's really hard for me to believe that Trudeau is going to be 80, looking back on his life, and he's going to be, like, happy with it. Like, to me, that's going to be his great punishment. Like, his great punishment is going to be the realization that, like, oh, I could have actually done real things. I was the Prime Minister of Canada. Like, the Prime Minister of Canada has an enormous amount of power in Canada. Like, an enormous amount of power. Like, all of the power that the Queen had distilled down into the office of the Prime Minister. If Justin Trudeau personally wants to pass a basic income, he can do it. If Justin Trudeau personally wants to create, if he wants to subsidize food markets, he can do that. The Prime Minister's office has an enormous amount of power. And he's just going to look back. He's going to be an 80-year-old man looking back on his life, and he's going to be like, why did I do nothing? I did nothing. I was a completely worthless Prime Minister who achieved nothing and will be forgotten. And he will be forgotten. He should be forgotten. He's an embarrassment. Like, he's not even close to a leader. He's just a servant. He's just a servant of capital. At best, he is fucking Renfield. Like, at best. Capitalism has a culture problem. People are totally disconnected from each other. But that's a feature, not a bug of capitalism. You need people to be alienated from one another, right? That if people actually come together and they begin to speak with one another in solidarity, well, what follows is strikes. Because anybody with any brain in their head will realize how intolerable this is. Like, it's completely intolerable. Like, capitalism is a shit system that needs to be dismantled. Like, it's literally destroying us. Like, this isn't like a philosophy thing. This isn't a theory thing. The comet is coming. There is a comet coming towards Earth. And the difference between this narrative of the comet and what's actually happening is that the system is generating the comet. Like, it's as if capitalism is the force that is moving the comet forward. Like, and it's not abstract. It's not theoretical. It's a very practical problem. The system of capitalism is going to destroy us all, and we're just going to watch it happen. I once made a joke about the opium wars. When Latin America sells drugs, cartel when the white man sells drugs, company. Yeah, exactly. No, it's true, though. As someone who enjoys Pulp Fiction from the 1920s, it's interesting to see all this yellow peril talk coming back. Yeah, I wonder if they'll bring back Fu Manchu. Yeah, probably will. Like, guys, I can't overstate that, like, when the Republicans reclaim power, like, things are going to get, like, real racist. Like, real, like, in your face, like, right in front of your face racism all the time. Like, they're going to bring back, like, I assume when you say Fu Manchu, you're talking about that, like, stereotypical, like, Chinese racist image, right? Like, get ready for it. Straight up. Like, get ready for it. Like, they're going to get somebody like someone like Clint Eastwood to direct films, and the villains of the films will be like overt racist caricatures, right? And America will go in and like be Americans, and we're all supposed to just be like, oh yeah, this is the greatest thing ever. And huge sections of the society will. Like, get ready for it. It's coming. Like, this idea that like we've done away with the high level racism. Nope. When the Republicans seize power again, these sorts of films and this sort of culture will become ubiquitous again, like as it was before, right? Yeah, Belt and Road we did 60 to 100 years ago. They want a united front by nations, but not the citizens. Interesting point. Blame China instead of our own government industry. Yeah. No, it's a classic capitalist. That's a really good point, Harry. Like, it's a classic capitalist strategy, right? Is to find a scapegoat, right? That's why America always needs the boogeyman. It always needs it, because it needs the populace focused on something external instead of asking itself, how do we improve our own society? Shenaniganry. Is that what I said? Shenaniganry? Anyway. Good to see you, Just JC. Glad you're here. Las Vegas is running $1 billion per month in casino revenue. Yeah, I mean, like, and what is that? It's just nothing, right? It's just literally just gambling, just taking money and gambling it. A human follower of a vampire is a familiar. Rob McBean coming in, saving the fucking day. Dun, 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 dun. Yeah, Trudeau's a familiar. Shenaniganry from Calgary. Trudeau is a toady. Toady, yeah, that's another good one, actually. But he would be removed somehow by the bourgeoisie. Yeah, they just get him with a cancer gun, right? Just, oh, he was so young. I think people like Obama and Trudeau are able to justify everything they do to themselves because they see themselves as working in a system that cannot be changed. Yeah, there's something to that, right? There is something to that. But, like, the big difference between Obama and Trudeau is that, like, Obama is actually limited because the presidency doesn't actually have that much power. The system is designed that way to ensure that a dictator can't come in and just like ramshot do a bunch of stuff. That has loosened a little bit over time, like with executive orders that the Bush administration used a ton of and all of this kind of stuff. But it's different here in Canada. Like, you would be absolutely floored to learn how much power the Prime Minister's office has. Like, the Prime Minister is essentially a king. Like, essentially. Like, he can dictate what he wants to see done, and his party will vote yes, or else they'll get thrown out of the party, because he's the fucking Prime Minister. And, like, how do you think Pierre Elliott Trudeau got the shit done that he did? Right? Like, when they passed the universal healthcare system, like, they fucking did it. And they didn't need to, like, negotiate with anyone. Right? Oh, Chrystia Freeland is actually worse than Trudeau, if you ask me. Because unlike Trudeau, she actually does have ambition. Like, his ambition is to be the Prime Minister. That's it. He doesn't care to actually do anything or accomplish anything or improve the world in any meaningful way. Right? He's got no plans or projects or ideas or thoughts. Like, he just wants to be the Prime Minister. He just wants to go to exotic locales and read from his cue cards and go, like, eat exotic meals in places that he hasn't been before, right? Like, that's it. And, like, a day's work for this guy is standing up in front of cameras and reading from cue cards. And he probably forgets what he reads the second he reads it. Like, he genuinely does not have thoughts or ideas. Chrystia Freeland does. Chrystia Freeland has thoughts and ideas, right? Like, let's arm neo-Nazi groups in Ukraine. Like, as much as I go after Trudeau for that because it happened under his watch, well, the reality is that's actually Chrystia Freeland that pushed that forward, right? Like, so when you're talking about Justin Trudeau, you're talking about somebody who's just like a familiar. He's just a faff. Well, Freeland is a ghoul, right? Like she's not as impressive as a vampire, but she's better than a familiar. She's like a ghoul. She has an ambition to destroy and consume everything around her, and she's going to do it. Like, and what's so sneaky and duplicitous about someone like Chrystia Freeland is that she's actually written books on the subject of like wealth inequality and all of this. So she so she'll tell you that she knows the subject matter because she's saying all the right words. But what's her actions? Sacrifice everything at the altar of the death cult. That's Chrystia Freeland to a T. And she's actually going to pursue it. Whereas Trudeau just sort of allows it to flow. Like Trudeau just allows the waves of the death cult to flow over him, right? If they hand him a cue card, he'll read it. Whereas Freeland will pursue it, right? That's the difference between the two of them. Like, they're not interested in helping anybody. They're not interested in improving the society in any meaningful way. And then they're going to turn around and like blame countries that actually are attempting to improve themselves. And we just vote for it. That's where it becomes like absolutely shocking, because ultimately the justification for our entire system is that we say it's democratic and that we'll just vote these people out. If they're doing something we don't like, we'll just vote them out. Well, here we go. Like what more do you need, right? They're literally funding fossil fuel companies, right? They're funding them. They're passing all of the legislation that the fossil fuel industry wants to see. They're passing it. They're buying pipelines. They're funding neo-Nazi groups. They're assaulting First Nations people on their own land, right? Like, if you're not voting these guys out, then you're not actually serious. Like, you're just kind of giving up, frankly. And like, I just don't. At the end of the day, it is our responsibility. Like, these people are just narcissistic nothings. Like, they lie directly to your face, and they know that they're lying. And we just keep voting for them. It's pretty staggering. Like a pretty big indictment of our culture, frankly, if you ask me. Like a pretty big indictment of our culture. That we just keep voting for these guys. Like at this stage in the game, we would be better off voting for empty paper bags and shit. Like literally, like 4 years of just an empty paper bag would be better than what we've got now. And like, we're not an intelligent people. Not by a long shot. Yeah, and here's China. This is a great strategy, by the way, by China. So Mike Pompeo, who's China is our adversary and it has every intention of taking down our republic. Chen Wuhan, Chinese state-affiliated media, of course, responds, Pompeo, the Joseph Goebbels of the United States, spoke again. This is a good strategy. Because, first of all, it's completely accurate, right? Like, the United States is, in my view, as terrifying as the Nazis ever were. Like, the United States has completely gone off the rails. And in many ways, it's worse than the Nazis, because even the Nazis weren't attempting to destroy all human life, right? The way that the United States is. Like, the number one polluter, if everybody stopped polluting, if everyone stopped doing everything that they were doing, but the United States military kept doing what it was doing, we still would experience massive climate change. Like, it's the number one source of climate change related problems, and we don't talk about it at all. Like, we have to stop participating in it. We've got to stop participating in this. And like, what's it going to take? Like, what is it going to take, do you think? I'm not asking that rhetorically. Like, I'm genuinely saying, like, what do you think it's going to take before the populace actually goes, like, yeah, maybe these guys are actually not on our side? Like, I'm not sure. So how can we come to a democratic communism, which is only hope for humanity without slavery? As long as money exists, greed will protect it. Is there another way? No, at this point, we have to surround the halls of power. Like, that's what we should be focusing on. As leftists, as humans, as just basic shit. Like, we have to organize, we have to come together, and we have to surround the halls of power. This, like, marching by the halls of power, this, like, having one protest day where everybody shows up and then goes home, right? All that kind of shit. That's not going to do it. These guys are psychopaths. Like, they don't care. They're just going to look at you and be like, oh, isn't that cute? And then they'll stand up and be like, yes, we too are concerned about climate change, right? Like, they don't care. They're psychopaths. And until we actually surround the halls of power and surround their homes, nothing's going to change, right? And I'm quite serious about this. Like, surrounding the halls of power with the intention of redrawing the Constitution. Because in history, and the United Nations even has like a process for this. If the people surround the halls of power and redraw their constitution, and the people actually say this constitution is our new constitution, and it can begin to be recognized internationally, then that becomes the new constitution. Do you think a revolution is actually realistic in the United States? I mean, there's tons of precedent for it. There's tons of precedent for it. Like, in the 1930s and 40s, the White House was surrounded by communists and socialists. That's why the New Deal happened. In the civil rights movement, where the hippies joined up with people like Martin Luther King, right, and the pacifists, what were they doing? They were surrounding the halls of power. They were surrounding the White House. So and this gets Nixon to capitulate in a ton of shit, like a ton of shit. So there's precedent for it. Like, it is how Americans actually get things done. It happens over and over again in their history, right? Like, every 50 years, there is this just upswell where suddenly major epicenters are surrounded. And if it's not the surrounding of the halls of power, then it's a straight up civil war, right? So, like, do I think a revolution is actually realistic in the United States? Yeah, according to their own history. Right? And not far distant in the past history, within living memory. Right? Like, and not like living memory like your grandparents, like your parents. Like, what do you think the free love movement was? Like, the Beatles were singing songs like, so you say you want a revolution, baby, yeah. Like, it wasn't abstract. They were surrounding the White House. Significant legislation was passed because of it. Like, we need to do it again. Only this time, we got to go all the way. And what I mean by that when I say we got to go all the way is that we can't stop until the means of production are out of the hands of the psychopath class. Until the workers are in control of the means of production in these countries, we cannot relent. Because these people are psychopaths, and they will do everything they can to destroy the planet, which is their goal at this point, if you ask me. Like, another thing that I really critique Don't Look Up for is that it was finally just about, like, arrogance and hubris, right? That they were saying, like, yeah, we're going to get all this treasure from this comet, and it just didn't work out. Whereas I genuinely believe that there are people in the conversation who want to see the world destroyed. They want it. That is their goal. Maybe it doesn't stop the greed that money creates, though. I mean, money is just, like, money is an abstract sort of concept in the first place, right? Like, greed is a human attribute. Like, you don't need money to have greed. It's just that we've structured our entire society to facilitate greed. For God's sakes, we published articles in the 80s saying greed is good. right? You can find them. They're easy to find, right? Greed is good. Greed is good. Quote me. Here from Schmoop, right? Just a quote. Gordon Gekko. The point is, ladies and gentlemen, that greed, for lack of a better word, is good. But like, greed is good. The Economist. Is greed good? Greed is good. 50 years ago, Milton Friedman told us greed was good. Remember Milton Friedman, the psychopath that helped invade and torture a bunch of people in Chile? We're all supposed to listen to this psycho? You'll notice that Milton Friedman has kind of faded out of the conversation is now being replaced with someone like Thomas Sowell, right? The Uncle Tom of the generation. Like, because they know they can't use Milton Friedman because Milton Friedman is a psychopath who like literally helped invade and destroy a country. Like what happened in Chile is completely on Milton Friedman's head, for sure. Like the torture regime under Pinochet, the destruction of the economy, the destruction of the society, the massive spread of poverty, right? But worked for white people, so who gives a shit? So like even if you eliminated money, like the problem is this culture. The problem is a culture that says greed is good, right? Like Lenin said, so flower power didn't work, so what, we carry on. Yeah. Like we got to carry on, right? We got to keep going on. That means the only way is a physical conflict. I doubt the big capitalists will go quietly. No, of course. No, of course. In the 60s, they shot students at Kent State, right? Like the military went in and shot a bunch of students in Kent State in the middle of all of that, right? People will die, right? The military will open fire. Like during the Occupy movement, for God's sakes, the level of violence that occurred in the Occupy movement was pretty staggering to see, right? And eventually they'll just come to a point where they'll like kettle people and take them to like torture black sites in Chicago, which we know exist, right? Like these people are fascists. Like they're psychopathic fascists, and they will kill people. Absolutely. We gotta stand up and fight against them anyway. That's it. Like that's it. Like is this life really, like, what's this life giving you? Right? I think it's better to live a life fighting against these demons. Right? That's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to either be the demon or fight against the demon. This idea that you're just going to put your head down and like just grind out like a nice little living, like that's done. That story is over. That's not going to happen. The reality is that you either are with the demons or against them. And if you're going to be against them, be against them. And I will be here doing that until they get me, and I will report on the people they destroy as the heroes that they are. Like those women who got sentenced to I can never remember the name. Women who went to prison for destroying pipelines. Yep, here you go. Iowa climate activist sentenced to 8 years in federal prison for Dakota Access Pipeline sabotage. Climate Access Jessica Resnick and Ruby Montoya were indicted on 9 federal charges for attempting to destroy a pipeline. These people are heroes. They are martyred for the cause. I celebrate what they have done. They should have done that. What the death cult is doing to them for attempting to fight back against the destruction of the planet is definitely a warning shot across the bow for all of us. But it doesn't make them any less heroic. I consider these 2 women heroes, that when they are finally released from prison, I will listen to what they have to say. I would love to interview them and talk to them about their heroism and how they are fighting against the death cult. Like, because this is what it's going to take. Like, these people are psychopaths. They will destroy the planet. The comet will hit the Earth. Like, they don't care. They genuinely don't care. Much of the energy is on the right wing now. The small business types. The revolution of small boat dealers. They'll let them do it because these people don't want to change anything. I mean, it's just delusion, though. Like, it's just delusion. Like, clinging on to a fantasy. Right? Like, I want to be a small business owner. Like, that's not how the system actually works. It's genuinely not how it works. And it's just a delusion at this point. And, like, you can see how deep the delusion is. Just do yourself, like, I don't know if this would be a favor, but, like, read any of this stuff from the Capitalist Manifesto. Like, it's diluted. Like, all of these things are hate capitalism. Here's how it keeps lifting millions out of poverty. The Capitalist Manifesto, why free speech must be protected at all costs. The Capitalist Manifesto, Conrad Black on invincibility of capitalism and reestablishing America's place in the world. Like, this is diluted nonsense. Like, it is dementia, what we're seeing. Like, capitalism has become like a demented zombie. Just like a shambling corpse that is only lurching forward because we keep allowing it to. As the populace. That fundamentally and finally, we are the last arbiters of whether or not this zombie keeps shambling along. And it seems as though we're completely fine with it. It seems as though we are just completely like, yeah, this zombie should completely shamble along. This should be exactly how things are. Like, capitalism allows the individual to shape society for the better, and it needs to be protected. Like, deluded madman conversations. Like, absolute nonsense. Yeah, Conrad Black, the Sith Lord. And of course, Conrad Black has his own one of these articles. Oh yeah, it's this invincibility bullshit. Like, and for some reason, the National Post is considered a credible news outlet. Like, for some reason, people actually read this stuff and think like, yeah, that is how the world is. Yeah. Like, meanwhile, they're literally like abandoning their children to a comet hitting the Earth. Like, it's brutal. Yeah, they don't need to have a revolution. We're just waiting for Trump to come back. I mean, Trump is going to win the next election. Like, it looks pretty realistic. Like, Trump got voted in because the American populace was tired of the bullshit. The Obama years were total bullshit for most Americans. But then, you know, they bought into the idea that Trump was actually dangerous and bought into the idea that the Democrats were actually going to do something. But then the Democrats got in, what did they do? Fucking nothing. Like, literally nothing. Like, what have they done? For real. Like, can anybody name a single thing that they have actually achieved? Bombing Somalia, I guess. Losing the war against Afghanistan. Like, Donald Trump's going to come back. Right? And you thought his first term was aggressive? Can we skip all this stupid Weimar garbage, make Trump president now instead of waiting around until 2024? If we don't, he's going to be president in all our heads until 2024. And then will the actual president until 2028? I'd rather just rip off the Band-Aid and watch this ineffectual nonsense. Thanks. Yeah, too bad, onward. Too bad. That's not how it works. Capitalism has existed since money was created. I don't think that that's accurate, Adcooch. Like, it's capitalism is a different thing from money. Money is different, and it is, and there's a bit of a debate about the nature of money and who created money first and how did it come into being. Some people are even of the opinion that money existed before writing existed, that we've been using a common currency just as a convenience, and it arises from the populace. And then some people are of the opinion that no, money arises from the state exclusively. Certainly money is supported by the power of the state. Marx Marx himself takes the position that money does just come out of the people. That money is like, if you have a commodity market, right? If there are commodities, well, one of those commodities will be used as the common currency. Something like gold, for example, right? And but money predates capitalism for sure, because the defining characteristic of capitalism is who ultimately owns the means of production. And you can have money in a society where the workers own the means of production. You can have money in a society where the means of production are owned by the entire populace, right? Instead of just a small cabal of psychopaths, the way that capitalism is structured. So, and good questions on like, is money, like what is money important? Do we need money? Is money of value, right? Like Trotsky wrote that if you created a society in which everybody's needs were taken care of, well, money would just sort of wither away. It would just sort of become, like, it would be there, but nobody would think it was very important in the end. That was sort of his position, that you shouldn't banish money or abolish money, because it'll just, if you just take care of the needs of the workers, and if the workers have their needs taken care of, then money itself as a commodity will fade away and sort of be seen as something that's there but not important. Maybe something better will be waiting on the other side, but I just don't understand what this interim is for. Well, that's humanity, man. That's humanity. Like, most human beings, and like one of the things that I think leftists generally need to accept is that like most human beings don't like study humanity in this way. Most human beings don't spend good portions of their life actually studying what it is to be a human and what it is to be alive in the world and any of that. Most people are just trying to get through their day, right? Spend a little bit of time with the people they care about, and then get drunk on the weekend. Really. Like that's what most people are doing. And so, like, there is a theory that says like we've got to go through these periods because that is how societies learn, if societies are capable of learning. And we will see if societies are capable of learning, by the way, in real time. This is another reason, and Onward, I suggest for you as well, and for everybody, start really paying attention to what European nations are doing. Start paying attention to what the Asian nations are doing. Start paying attention to what African nations are doing. Stop paying attention to so much to what North America and Canada are up to, right? Because there are positive news stories. Like, there is stuff that is happening in the world, and things that you can look to and be like, oh, here's something interesting. Just none of it is happening in North America, right? And like, stop hyper focusing on what's going on in this ultimately small section of humanity, right? Like, America is not going to be the country that or the nation that leads into the next century. Like, it's just not. America is facing up against 100 years of humiliation. And like, I'm dead serious about that. It's 100 years of humiliation. Like, you and I are going to die in a society that is actively abandoning its own citizens. That's what is going to happen, right? Like, and at this stage in the game, unless we surround the halls of power and actually stand up and foment some form of revolution, right? That's what's on the cards. We're heading towards a techno-feudalism, whether it's Democrat or Republican, whether it's liberal, NDP, or conservative. Like, none of them are actually doing anything to prevent it. None of them are doing anything to stop it, right? Because they don't care, right? Because they're happy with their position in life, and they don't need to actually stand up for anything because they don't really believe in anything, right? They certainly don't have a vision for the future. They certainly don't have a vision for what's going on, right? Because they're the most pathetic narcissists our society can vomit out, right? Like, that's who these people are. And so do away with this idea that like suddenly things are going to improve. Like, that's not going to happen. And once you live in that reality, once you just accept the reality of it, right? Well, you have two options, right? Option number one, right? You can do something about it. Well, you actually have three options, truth be told. Option number one, you can just shoot yourself. Option number two, you can just put your head down and try to get through it. Or option number three, you can fight. I choose to fight. 15 in chat, 6 likes, do it. Good opportunity to say, please like, share, and subscribe. If you don't share it, they don't see it. YouTube's not sharing this shit, right? The YouTube's doing everything it can to end this upsurge of leftism that's occurring on its platform. It doesn't want communists. It doesn't want socialists. It's doing everything it can, and the sharing is the most important part. If you've got $1 jangling around in your pocket, please consider donating to my Patreon. It gets you into my Discord. If you donate $5, I'll give you all my music. If you donate $10, I'll give you some of my larger projects. But even $1 helps. And also, honestly, anytime anybody donates any money to me, it makes me feel super good about myself. That's the number one thing. Make me feel good about myself. I would love it if this channel started to pay my rent. Boy, howdy, would that be nice. Boy, howdy, would that be nice. In that regard, I'm like a quarter of the way there. I'm a quarter of the way to having my rent paid with this channel. And if I hit 1,000 and they actually start monetizing, we'll see how that goes. But it would be really, really cool if this channel started to actually pay my rent. Anyway, oh God, I hate doing the capitalism. I got to get better at it. Just reminding people, like, hey, even $1 would help. Even $1 would help. But boy, howdy, do I hate doing it. I would much rather not have to ever talk about the money. I'd really rather never talk about the money. Trump lost a lot of his fringe base with the advocacy for vaccines, but it is going to turn into, like, so Matthias, what that means though is that, like, that's going to manifest itself in the Republican convention, right? Because it'll come down to Trump versus probably someone like DeSantis, right? It's completely possible. But if the Republicans move forward with Trump, like, those fringe people are not going to suddenly turn around and vote Democrat. Like, they're going to stick with the Republicans. So I think that this is a bit overblown. And Trump, with his advocacy for vaccines and advocacy for, like, he's not really advocating for the vaccine. He's trying to take credit for the vaccine. That's really why he's doing it. That he'd rather take credit for the vaccine than pretend as though the vaccine is not useful. And in the end, he's playing the game that the Democrats played for decades, which is these guys have nowhere else to go. So, you know, okay, yeah, so it alienates some of the people in the base. Meh. They've got nowhere else to go. They're not gonna suddenly go to the Democrats. So it's not a big deal. It isn't. Similar to the Canadian version of the anti-vax dissent with O'Toole. It's a little bit different in Canada, though, because Canada, like, it's easier to create parties in Canada, as you can see with the rise of the PPC, right? And we'll see how that goes, right? We'll see how that goes. Yep, capitalism is using production for the sake of profits rather than for the sake of meeting needs. Well, and the true problem with capitalism is that it's not actually using its production at all. Financialization is what's taken over, right? Instead of actually doing anything, instead of actually creating something of value, right? They're just shuffling money around and, like, trading stocks with one another, right? And, like, it's meaningless. Like, it's completely worthless, which no way he predicted NFTs, chapter 25, credit and fictitious capital, right? Marx predicted this rise of fictitious capital, which is essentially what the markets are becoming. Venus Project posits a society without money, a resource-based economy. But here's the problem with that, okay? And part of the issue is that we don't actually really understand what money is, first of all. And there are lots of theorists, Marx included in this, who say that, okay, so you create a resource-based economy, right? Presumably there is still some kind of trade, that occurs, like people trade things with one another, right? Well, one of the resources that you allow in your economy, like if you don't allow money to exist, like if you say like, no, state-based money doesn't exist, it's gone. Okay. Well, then one of the commodities that exists within your resource-based economy becomes understood by the populace as the money, right? Like, I have actually seen this occur in real time in video games, right? Video games are actually the place that are pushing forward an understanding of economics in a more serious way, because developers actually attempt to create economies, and they attempt to create an understanding of what is an economy, and sometimes they do things that actually destroy their economy, and they go, whoops, and then they got to recalibrate and refigure and restructure it, right? Because they're not economists, they don't know anything about it, so they're just kind of ad hocing it. But like, I used to play a lot of Diablo 2, right? And in Diablo 2, what became known as the common currency were stones of Jordan. And it just happened. The populace just, the player base just came to understand, like, yeah, I've got a stone of Jordan. That has a stagnant value. That is worth something. And that is worth this, right? And so it became like the comparative value, and people began to understand, like, okay, this is worth this many stones of Jordan. And while this is sort of a silly example of what I'm talking about, it's something that will occur in every economy. That eventually, if you have a resource-based economy, well, something will become the thing that everybody knows and uses as the common currency, right? Like, poker chips. You got 100 poker chips? Okay, right? Like, it just seems to be something that's built in to how humans operate and how humans do. And now, this isn't to say that there aren't counter arguments to this. That some people, the modern monetary theorists, for example, argue that money is only really given its value by the state, and that the military power that backs the currency is actually far more important than the actual value of the currency itself. So there's a lot of different ways to look at it, but I more or less come to money with this sort of idea that, like, if you just deleted money, if you just said no more money, delete, well, I think it would actually be good from the financialization perspective, because usually when people are complaining about money, they're not complaining about money. They're complaining about the financialization of the market. And the financialization of the market is essentially like a parasite. Like, the difference between and they'll call it the real economy, right? So if I have money, right, if I've got a handful of money and I go over to a shoemaker and I say, hey there, Mr. Shoemaker, I have money, give me shoe. And then he goes, here is your shoe. And I say, here is your money. And then the shoemaker has the money. And he goes, oh, very good. I would like beer. And he goes and he gives the money to Beer Man. And the Beer Man takes the money, right? This is what we think of when we think of an economy, right? And all of the things that are occurring as I'm describing them are useful, right? That Beer Man has a reason to make beer because Shoe Man comes over and gives money for shoe, and like all this kind of trading around, right? That goes on. And that's what would be called a real economy, because real things are being traded. The financialization market is a market that exists above that. That you take the money, and instead of going to Shoe Man to get shoes and Beer Man to get beer, you literally go and take your money and change it into another form of money. A bond or a stock or some kind of like thing that is also itself a type of financial money. Or even a different currency. You can change it to like the to like the rupee or the ruble or the rupee. That's funny. Like we're a Legend of Zelda, and like the ruble or the mark or something, right? And if you do it right and you time it right and you spend your time doing it, you can actually turn that money into more money. but you haven't done anything. You haven't created anything. You haven't encouraged anything. You haven't incentivized anything. You're not involved in a real economy. And this is what financialization is. It's taking money and just making more money with it. And the vast majority of our economy is based on this. When people look at the stock market, that's what they're looking at. They're looking at this bullshit economy that if it disappeared, no one would notice. Right? Like, and it's this financialization of the market using money that I think lots of people are thinking about when they talk about abolishing or getting rid of money. And I'm like, I'm completely in favor of getting rid of the financialization of our economy because it's worthless. Like, it's beyond worthless. It's actually harmful. Like, it doesn't help us. And I'm all in favor of that. But in terms of actually getting rid of money itself, I don't know that that's even possible. Services are the largest contributor to Canada GDP, banks being first. Yeah, but like, what are banks doing? Right? They're just creating money out of fucking nothing. They're doing nothing important. I'm not arguing for the Venus Project, just saying that there's work out there trying to address the money issue. Yeah, but, and no, and I understand that grinning, but I'm just trying to say, like, the money issue is not very well understood. Straight up. Like, it's just not very well understood. And I don't mean that, like, the populace is dumb and they don't understand it. I literally mean, like, the people who are studying what money is, powerful thinkers, people who have spent their life focusing on money, people like Karl Marx, your modern monetary theorists, like Keynes, even the people you hate, like Friedman or any of these guys. Like, there's a ongoing conversation about, well, what the fuck is money? And the one thing that everybody can agree on is that money isn't real. Like, that's the number one thing that everybody does actually agree on, is that money's not real. Like, it's not an actual thing. Like, we create coins and we create bills in order to sort of facilitate the abstract nature of what money is. And, like, you can make arguments like, money is the promise of labor or a representation of labor, right? You can sort of create those sorts of things, or it's a representation of value, right? And you're like, but it, like, so it ends up being like abstractions within abstractions, right? Just this idea that I have something that is just universally understood to be worth something, even though it itself is not actually worth anything. It doesn't do anything. So in the end, money is like best understood as a tool. That's how I've come to understand money. Money is just a tool that we use in the society. The trouble with our culture is that we have come to worship the tool, right? Like, it would be like living in a society where you worshipped hammers and nails, right? That, like, oh, the man with the hammer is the best man, and the nail man is his, like. Yeah, money is a shared delusion. You can't eat a bank account. Well, and like, it has that like, money can only exist because of the skill set that we have as a species, which is that we have the ability to think about and then articulate and understand abstract thoughts. That, like, it's a very special set of tools that humanity has. That is unique, that is finally unique to humanity. That, like, we know that there are other species out there that are probably as intelligent and as sentient as we are, but they don't have the ability to articulate abstract thought in the way that we have. That, like, I can articulate to you an idea or a plan, and that plan and that idea can exist in an abstract space that doesn't really exist. And then you can articulate part of that, and we can shift and change the abstract thought together. And then we can do that as a community, coming up with plans, and then we can draw those plans out, right? Still living in an abstract space of our own creation, right? And something easy, like building a house, right? Like, we can draw up a plan, and we can have all these ideas and all this kind of stuff, and then finally we can move forward and take that from the abstract into the real, right? And this is a skill that humanity has, that we can do. We can imagine something, articulate that imagination, communicate amongst one another and collaborate on the imagined abstract idea, and then manifest that imagined idea into the real world. This is a skill. We have it. And the free market capitalists essentially say, don't use it. Right? Just don't use it. Like, that's literally what they're arguing for. Like, we have the ability to create massive, huge scale plans by articulating ideas to one another. And the most powerful people in the conversation are constantly blasting us with the idea that we shouldn't. Let the market decide, it says. Let chaos reign. So let the rich do what they want. And that's not a delusion, right? Like, money coming out of that arrangement is along the same line, that humans kind of just go, well, we want to be able to trade things with one another really easily. Like, and it's such a pain in the ass to like, so creating some kind of common currency, creating some kind of understanding that, like, I have these many shiny stones, right? Like, that itself has value. And it's also kind of an understanding that exists within humanity that, like, everybody should have access to certain commodities, and everybody should have access to things. That, like, there's big, long histories all throughout medieval Europe. It was just well understood that the way we were going to create stable economies is that we're going to distribute currency into the society. We're going to let the society use that currency, and then we're going to bring it all back in, make sure there's no counterfeiting, and then we're going to redistribute it all, right? But there was, like, a core understanding that, like, everybody needs to have access to food and shelter, and everybody needs to have access to goods and all of this kind of stuff. So we're just going to create and then distribute a currency to be able to let them to do that. And that's using currency as a tool, which is what it is. Fundamentally, it's a tool. Like, but we have come to worship it. That's really what it is. We have just come to worship it. To me, it's pretty simple. There is an amount that is more than enough to live on lavishly. Any surplus should go back to the population to balance out the wealth gap. Yeah. No, I completely agree with that. Like, it to me, it doesn't seem very hard at all. Like, if you created, like, part of the issue, honestly, what I'm about to say here was well understood by, like, ancient societies understood this, that any economy that you create, any economic sort of system that involves any kind of money is eventually going to pool and monopolize. It's just eventually going to do that. That the reason why there are things like jubilees, the reason why there are redistributive measures put into societies, is because they understood that, like, yeah, eventually all of the wealth will accrue under a small group of people. Like, that's what happens. And it seems to me like the most successful societies that have the most longevity are the ones that put hard caps in and say straight out, like, a single individual can only attain this much. And the reason why I think it's important that a single individual can only attain a certain level is that if a person begins to accrue enough wealth, then that individual supplants the system of distribution and the system of society building itself. And they become the icon of the society. The trouble is that they as an individual can't actually respond, even if they were a benevolent, good, wonderful, happy person. Even if they were a person that was standing there saying, I want the best for everybody. I want everybody to have food. I want everybody to have shelter. I want everybody to do what they want to do. Even if the person standing at the very apex of this pile of money said those things and believed it, they would be incapable of doing it because they can't respond to the needs of the populace as fast as the populace can accrue those needs, right? They'd literally spend their entire life doing it, and then in the end they would realize, oh, the best way for me to ensure that everybody has access to food, shelter, education, health, right, would be to simply take my big giant pile of money and give it away. So just create it in the system to say that a person, when they attain a certain level of wealth, that's it for them. You did it. Congratulations. We'll write your name somewhere if you like. You can have a plaque somewhere if you like, right? We'll name that library after you if you like. You did it. You accrued the amount of wealth that we say you can have, right? Because any growth outside of that is harmful to the society as a default. It is harmful to the society to have people accruing more wealth than they know what to do with, because that wealth comes from somewhere. That as you accrue wealth up here, you siphon it away. You siphon it away. And so you stand on a giant pile of wealth that is siphoned away from the rest of the society, and they literally can't use it. And the only way to actually resolve that is to give the fucking money away. So just build it in systemically. Just create a system that does that by default. So that any wealth that you create, and I put it as low as $1 million. Like, that's where I put it. Like, I say 10 million because I think people are a little bit softer. I'm like, oh yeah, 10 million, that seems okay. But I put it at $1 million. If you have $1 million, you're good. Like, you've got the big house, you've got the car, you've got all this shit, right? Sure, you can't shoot yourself into rockets into space. And like, sure, you can't have like a fucking private jet and all this kind of shit. But you know what else you can't do? You can't buy the political system. You know what else you can't do? Right? You can't buy all the businesses in a town. You know? Like really fucking harmful shit. You can't do it. And so like, to me, the issue is not actually money. It's the accruing of wealth under single individuals. And like, we could end that. It would actually be very easy to end that. Like, Justin Trudeau could literally write a one-pager and end it tomorrow here in Canada, right? And all the capitalists would cry about it, and I would be like, your tears taste delicious. Like, get the fuck out of here. Like, I love it when capitalists say, like, well, then I'll just leave. And I'm like, oh, thank God, good. But thank you for improving our society by leaving, you fucking psychos. Once again, I gotta point it out. I'm going to keep reporting on these too. And anybody who does anything like this, Jessica Reznicek and Ruby Montoya, you are heroes. Thank you for doing what you're doing. I know 8 years in prison seems like a hard push for doing what had to be done, or what should be done. But I think that you two are heroes, and I hope one day to speak with you and say to your face that you are the heroes that you are. When Suzuki stood up and said that, he said, like, eventually we'll have to start blowing up this infrastructure, and then he came down from it and he apologized for that statement. I wish he hadn't have. I wish he had to double down. I straight up wish that David Suzuki, I wish when he said that, like, people will eventually start blowing up infrastructure, instead of apologizing for it, I wish he had to come out and be like, no, fuck you. Like, you guys are psychos. Like, people will eventually have to start doing this because you're so fucking psychotic. Like, get fucked. But instead of that, he came down from it and was like, oh, I'm so sorry. I don't know why he did it, but... America, why is everyone getting misinformation about medicine? Also, America, simply looking at a doctor will cost you $10,000. Yeah. Like, why do you think there's so much misinformation going on? Because actually talking to doctors costs a lot of money. So, like, people are, like, turning to fucking, you know, hacks and charlatans because they got nowhere else to turn. Yet another failure of capitalism, right? Like, why is there so much mistrust in the society? Because it costs a lot of money to find experts, right? Well, why should I pay for another person to go to a doctor? Because you don't want to live in a society full of illiterate morons. Like, this period of time in with the pandemic, like, the question we should be asking each other, is how in God's name are there this many people who straight up do not even think the pandemic is real? When I went down to the anti-mask rallies that were happening here in Toronto, and they're still happening here in Toronto, I would go down there, and and it wouldn't be like I would talk to one person and they'd be like, I don't think this is real, like, or any of that. I would go talk to people and they would say to me, go talk to this guy. This is one of our leaders. This is a person that we all put our faith in. And I would sit down and the first thing they would say to me is the pandemic isn't real. COVID isn't real. What the fuck? How the fuck is that happening? That's a very serious thing that's happening in our society. And like we all saw what was going on in America. People throwing fucking temper tantrums because they had to put a piece of cloth over their face to go into a Walmart. Like embarrassing juvenile little hissy fits. Like total fucking nonsense. Well, what do you think? You don't educate people, right? It costs thousands of dollars to go talk to a fucking doctor. Like everyone's poor. Nobody knows what's going on. Your experts are not part of the normal society. Like, yeah. Did you not understand that we literally are monkeys? Like, did you not understand that? Like, that if you'd like, we can go back to just being fucking monkeys. Right? We keep this up and that's exactly what's going to happen. Right? We're just dumb apes with guns. That's it. The only distinguishing factor, the only thing that really does seem to separate us from the apes is that we have the ability to articulate abstract thought. Like maybe there is an ape that came up with like quantum mechanics or came up with calculus or came up with some kind of mathematical formula, but he can't tell anybody about it. Right? Like maybe there is like an ape that figured out how everything works. He like started meditating and he opened his mind up to the quantum level of reality and he went into like the galaxy and he experienced the world for what it was. And then he came back and he was just a fucking monkey and he couldn't tell anybody about it. Like we are like one step ahead of that. And what's the difference between a group of monkeys and a group of humans who refuse to actually use the ability to articulate abstract thought? What is the difference, really? Well, we wear pants. And so it's no small wonder, right? It's no small wonder. Societies that are based on the premise that we are only as valid or as valuable or as important or as special as our weakest citizens are going to do much better than societies that say dumb fucking shit. Like, well, why should I pay for someone else's education? Because you don't want to live in a society full of fucking stupid people? Why would you want to live in a society full of stupid people? Well, I'm going to keep my money for myself. They can pay for their own education. Well, then you're going to have a whole society full of really, really stupid people there, Jeb. Pretty obvious shit. Pretty straightforward shit. Cuba and China united by the new Silk Road. Now, this is an interesting one. The Cuba story in regards to China. Yeah, that's what I want. Because of the geography of it, it's a bit weird. It's a bit weird. So I wanted to take a look. Like, here's your Cuba, man, right? But as you can see, right, China's like way the fuck over here. So for Cuba to get access to China's market, it's got to be like ba 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 da ba 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 ba. Or maybe would it be shorter for them? Do you think? Ba ba da 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 da. So either way, like it's like 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Like they gotta like Indiana Jones, like with the red line, like all the way under here and then all the way back over here. Like it's a huge journey to get from Cuba to China. And so China's trying, I think, to figure out how to connect with Cuba. Because Cuba historically has been an important communist icon, right? That the United States, it's a thorn in the backside of the United States. they can't actually, and that they seem unable to dislodge. And so China connecting with Cuba, I think is going to be desperately important, not only for Cuba, but also for the Communist project. So on December 23rd, Cuban Deputy Prime Minister Ricardo Cabreces Ruiz and the President of the National Commission for Development and Reform of China, He Lifeng, signed the cooperation plan between the government of the Republic of Cuba and the government of the People's Republic of China for the joint promotion of the economic belt of the Silk Road and the maritime Silk Road of the 21st century. This document makes effective the Memorandum of Understanding signed between the two governments in November 2018 for the inclusion of Cuba in the Belt and Road Initiative. The memorandum was prepared in correspondence with the economic and social development objectives of Cuba, in which China participates as a strategic partner, reads the Cuban newspaper Granma. The article of the cooperation plan includes the intentions of both sides to strengthen and promote bilateral cooperation in priority sectors for Cuba, such as infrastructure development, education, culture, health and biotechnology, communications, science and technology, and tourism, among other areas. Projects and actions are also agreed that include interests of mutual benefit, with the aim of further strengthening and diversifying the ties between Cuba and China, as well as with third countries that are members of this initiative. This agreement corroborates the long-standing friendship between Cuba and the People's Republic of China, so much so that Havana was the first Latin American government to establish diplomatic relations with Beijing in 1960. The Asian country is now Cuba's second trading partner, the second country by origin of imports, and the first as destination of its exports of products such as rum, tobacco, sugar, and coffee. That's huge news for Cuba, by the way. The signing of this document was preceded on the same day by the meeting held by the President Miguel Diaz-Canel, some of the Chinese investors on the island of Cuba. According to what reported by the Cuban press, the head of state analyzed the preparations to start the technological reconversion project of Empresa Grafica Habana, which is being advanced under the loan from the Asian government. The initiative will allow the printing of newspapers in the western part of the island, as well as books, magazines, notebooks, and other graphic resources, read Prensa Latina. Thanks to the collaboration with China, the printing house in the Cuban capital will have the most advanced machinery on the Latin American continent at its disposal. That's really exciting. That is actually really exciting. Like, this is what I've always said about Cuba, is that they just need tools. They just need tools. They've got a beautiful culture, and they're a beautiful people who obviously want the best for each other. And the only reason they're living in this state of poverty that everybody says, well, they're such a poor country and all this, is just they don't have access to tools. And now here's the Chinese government coming along and being like, hey, do you want a sick-ass printing press? And Cuba's being like, fuck yeah, we want a sick-ass printing press. And so China's like, here's the best printing press in Latin America. And Cuba is going to become like a propaganda outlet. Cuba's going to become like a propaganda, like a communist propaganda, just spewing it into the world. I think it's brilliant. I think it's totally fucking brilliant. Diaz-Canel also visited the branch of Yutong, a Chinese company that is engaged in the production of hybrid buses in Cuba. The president thanked the company, present in the country since 2005, for its support, having become the main supplier of equipment for the development of public transport, continues Prensa Latina. From his official Twitter account, the Cuban president stressed that the tour allowed him to verify the seriousness and rigor with which Chinese companies work in Havana, and recalled that China and Cuba are united by intimate and historical something. Anyway, on December 22, the Cuban ambassador in Beijing, Carlos Miguel Pereira, had instead held a seminar in China on socioeconomic transformations underway in Cuba. The ambassador began by referring to the negative effect for his country in the 2020 phase. 21 of the COVID-19 pandemic and resurgence of the economic, financial, and commercial blockade imposed on the United States. Later, he commented on the gradual recovery thanks to the response against the disease. the high rates of vaccination with his own products and the reopening of borders, reads Presna Latina. Continuing his speech, the diplomat addressed his government's strategy to relaunch the economy and indicated among the priorities the promotion of national production, the obtaining of food, the autonomy of businesses, and a greater attraction of foreign investments. Ambassador Pereira added that Cuba is ready to increase its exports of high-quality services in sectors such as health, education, and tourism, and also to exploit the potential for cooperation in other fields. After the ambassador's inaugural speech, Juan Alberto Kelly, head of the embassy's Economic Commercial Office, detailed the structures, policies, perspectives, and innovations to attract foreign capital and expand business opportunities in sectors strategic, noting that there are currently 678 active projects on the island in sectors such as food production, tourism, industry, and construction, among others. The Sino-Cuban Agreement is a new piece that adds to the expansion of economic relations maintained by Beijing with the countries of Latin America. Wang Ping, professor at Nanking University and vice president of the Association of Latin American History of China, wrote in the Global Times, "In general, the continued deepening of China-Latin American cooperation is a long-term trend. The common identity as developing economies and the common aspiration for internal development and international equity have brought inexhaustible momentum for both sides, and this momentum will continue long into the future." What a great article, right? What a great article. And yes, you're right here, actually, grinning guys. I forgot about the plan for the Nicaragua Canal. We'll see how that manifests, but it could work out. It could manifest into something interesting. And like Cuba's history has been like a very unusual one. The question that I continuously ask about Cuba is, why don't the Americans just like drop a bunch of bombs on it and invade it, right? Like they did with the Dominican Republic or Haiti, right, or Puerto Rico. This isn't new for the Americans to do this kind of shit. Why have they left Cuba alone? And like, it's got to be a myriad of reasons, right? That like Cuba has worked in the past with the Soviet Union, right? It's working with China. But I think the real success is that Cuba somehow became like the darling of Europe. That the Europeans and the Canadians both seem to have like a fairly positive relations with Cuba. And so they didn't see a desire to actually destroy this place. And they would actually think that doing that would be beyond the pale. So it just goes to show you that Fidel Castro, he must have been one hell of a politician, man. One hell of a politician. Uncounted, inaccurate death certificates across the country hide the true toll of COVID-19. Wavis Jordan, a Republican who was elected last year to serve as coroner of the 80,000-person county, says his office doesn't do COVID deaths. Yeah. Like what? You expect the Americans to actually do an accurate count? Come on, bud. Come on. Like, oh, the country that just sort of let the comet hit isn't also doing like an appropriate accounting of the devastation wrought by it? Here's my actual response onward. What? Like, sometimes I worry that people think I don't mean to be rude. It's just like yesterday, there were two fellas. Yeah, just clown shoes. Exactly, dude. There were two fellas in yesterday who really kind of got at each other in the chat. And they were really going after each other over an article that was about the CIA. It was on Gray Zone, and the CIA was funding a person on BreadTube to spread misinformation and all this kind of stuff and so on and so forth. And like they were really chirping at each other and like going back and forth, and it was getting. I had to like put them both in timeout because it was stupid. And honestly, the thing I said to both of them as I was reading the thing, I was like, This story is boring. Like, it's boring. It's a non-story. Of course the CIA is doing this kind of stuff. Like, so? Like, and what's the argument about? It's like the classic, like, leftists going at each other for fucking nothing. For just nothing. Like, who gives a shit? Like, who cares? One way or the other. Like, the CIA is not doing that. Okay, in this particular instance, the CIA is not doing that. The CIA is doing that. Yeah, I sort of expect it, honestly. Like, but we verified it. Okay. Like, so? Doesn't change anything for me. Like, I'm not suddenly going, what? The CIA is involved in internet propaganda? Yeah. Like, yeah, obviously. Like, it says that it is. Like, it's anyway. So connecting it back to this, like, that story that you're telling me there onward is very much along those same lines, where I'm like, yeah, like, what, you think they're actually counting? Like it's like when they release the employment numbers and they say, like, unemployment is at 5%. I'm like, sure it is. Like, yeah, okay. If you say so, chappie, sure it is. Right? And then you, like, dig into their methodology and you're like, oh yeah, like, this is bullshit. You mean a liar lied about the thing that he wasn't gonna lie about? What? Majorities in Alberta and Ontario would prefer a different premier. Vancouver, BC. As the year draws to an end, residents of Alberta and Ontario are particularly dissatisfied with their premiers, a new research poll has found. In the online survey of a representative national sample, 51% of Canadians think their province would be better off with a different head of government in charge. Majorities of Albertans, 73%, and Ontarians, 57%, suggest that the state of affairs would be more satisfactory under a different premier. The proportion is lower in Quebec and British Columbia, 42% and 35% respectively. Practically half of Canadians, 49%, believe their province would be better off with a different prime minister in Ottawa, while 36% disagree and 15% are undecided. Criticism of the current prime minister is the strongest in Alberta at 65%, Saskatchewan and Manitoba, 56%, British Columbia, 53%, followed by Ontario at 49% and Quebec, 42%, Atlantic Canada at 38%. I've never understood why Atlantic Canada is just like, yeah, liberals. Liberals! Yes, we love you, liberals! Yes! I don't get it. Like, what have the liberals done for the people of Atlantic Canada? I don't understand it. I don't see the connection. Like is it just like a holdover from like the like Trudeau mania of like the 70s? You know, like I'm just like I don't understand it at all. Just under 1 in 5 Canadians believe their province would be better off joining the United States. That's good. Right? Only 20% of us are stupid fucking morons. Can you imagine? Somebody walks up to you and says, hey, do you think it would be a good idea to join the United States? And you go, yeah, I think joining the festering ball of destruction, balkanizing nonsense that's going on in the United States would be great. Like, almost 2 in 5 Albertans and 3 in 10 Quebecers believe their province would be better off as its own country. That's actually that's lower than I thought it would be. Like, especially in Quebec, 3 in 10 Quebecers? I thought for sure that it would be higher than that. Believe their province would be better off as its own country. Like, we had a referendum in the 90s over that. Like, and it was close. It was close. It was like 49% to 50%. Like, There's a timeline out there, dude, where that went Quebec's way and Quebec did separate. Like that was a pretty seminal Canadian moment. Separatist sentiment in Alberta is currently near the levels observed in December 2019, 40%, said Markio Kensenko, president of Research Co. Across the province, 16% of residents strongly agree with the idea that they would be better off as an independent nation. Yeah, that's 16%. Like the land called Canada was ever ceded. Yeah, bazinga, Harry. You got it, dude. You got it. Wait a minute, Harry. Are you trying to say that there was some malfeasance? That the white Europeans that came into this land, wasn't it just sort of empty? Is that what you're saying, Harry? Is there some sort of underlying story that I'm not aware of? Have a good one, Grinning Bud. Good to see you. I'm just fucking with you. I know. Please, nobody shit at me, okay? Please, God, please. This guy's a genocide denier. This guy doesn't think that the First Nation... Bill Clinton intervened with Quebec separating? Probably. I believe that. Nobody wanted it. Like, the only people that actually wanted Quebec to separate were the people who were voting for it. Like, and it just kind of goes to show you how, like, heightened it really was, that it even became the issue that it was. It was like a national referendum, right? And like, yeah, nobody wants to see it. Like, none of the powerful, certainly. Like, it's so much easier. It's so much easier to just to negotiate with a federated body. You don't also want to start negotiating with these guys. Like, no. We got our man in the Prime Minister's office, right? There's Trudeau. Right, we'll talk to Trudeau, and then Trudeau can deal with that. And suddenly this is going to break off into its own thing, and like you look at them and you're like, oh, they don't speak American? These guys aren't even speaking American. Nope. Kamala Harris says she's looking for ways to creatively solve the 1.7 trillion student debt crisis. Yeah, that's just a fun way to say, I'm not interested in resolving the student debt crisis. They literally could write on a piece of, like, they could literally take, like, a napkin, and on the napkin write in red crayon, student debt is canceled, and then sign it Joe Biden, and that would be an official document. That would be it. You could take their stamp and stamp it or whatever, right? And that would be the end of it. Like, and Joe Biden himself can literally do that. Creative way. Fuck you. What a dumb moronic system. Like, and the more you actually dwell on student loans, the stupider it gets. This is definitely one of these times where I'm gonna do this. Paint. So what you are saying, like instead of saying like we're gonna put people on this trajectory, right? Right? Instead of saying that, where you're like, okay, we're gonna just pay for their schooling right up front, just like we do with high school, right? Just like we do with that, and put them on this trajectory so that by the time they're up in this bracket here, right? By the time they're up in here, right? They're making the good money. We can tax them here, right? We can tax them here and dump it back here, boom, boom, to pay for the schooling of people who are going up and up and up. And if we're smart, we're actually going to link schooling and education to professions, right? So as these people are getting studied, there's going to be industries that we're actually working with to connect them all together. Schooling and industry connect, right? But instead of that, right, we're gonna ensure that people are like this, right? So it's all gonna stagnate. It's gonna stagnate, and then finally, like when they get about here, it'll go up. And then you know what? We're going to make sure that it's so bad that they're just going to be like that. And then we won't even be able to tax them. We won't even be able to tax them at this point because they're not going to have enough money to tax. So we can't actually get it going. So what happens to the system? Oh, it collapses. And instead of actually linking anything to industry, right? We're just going to let the free market decide, so that between 20 to 30% of people literally don't work in the fields that they're part of. Like, it's a complete failure. It's a complete failure on the ground. And in the meantime, countries that are just like, yeah, we pay for people's education so that they can ascend and connect to the, and all that stuff, they end up doing a whole lot better. Why? Because they're not saddling their own citizens with a debt that they'll never pay. And like, America is the only country that doesn't even let people bankrupt. Like, that's a big yikes, bro. Like, that's a big, big yikes. If you're not even letting kids bankrupt out of the student loan debt, that's a huge fucking yikes. Like, you're destroying your country. That's a destruction of your society in large and significant ways. And in the meantime, like, everyone's like, wow, how is China so successful? Because they're not saddling their own people with enormous debts they'll never pay off. Yeah, higher education is worthless if the student ends up with jobs at Starbucks. Yeah. But in my view, this is part of the plan. Like, this is how the death cult operates, right? It's a death cult, right? It used the promise of education when really all it cared about were like vocational, like, it doesn't care about education in the way of improving society or the self. It cares about education in like, how can I exploit these workers? So, and this is what we were told. Like, if you went into the arts or the humanities or any of this kind of stuff, you were told, well, yeah, of course you're failing. No capitalist. You should get a skill. As if what I am doing is not skillful. Like, that's the thing that really fucking pisses me off, right? These illiterate, dumb Luddites whose job is literally like turning a crank are like, you need to get a skill. Yeah, reading and being literate and articulating what's happening in the society is a skill, bud. Like, just because you're too stupid to figure that out doesn't mean anything. And just because a capitalist doesn't want to pay for it, because usually observing the society and saying, oh, hey, there's a psychopathic death cult that's taking over. Yeah, it's usually the fact that death cultists won't actually pay for people to point out that they're part of a death cult. Her original plan, student loan forgiveness plan for Pell Grant receipts who started a business that operates for 3 years in disadvantaged communities. Jesus Christ, dude. Her original plan, student loan forgiveness plan for Pell Grant recipients who start a business that operate for 3 years in disadvantaged community. Like, Jesus Christ, just listen to it. Like, listen to how fucking detached it sounds. Like, we'll forgive your student loans if you open a business and it's successful for 3 years in a place where businesses can't be successful. Like, whoa. It's like Justin Trudeau's new support system, right? Like, the new support systems that they're putting in place are designed so that no one can use them. That's the reason they exist. So that they can be like, well, we have a support system. That's it, there it is, it's a support system. But like, nobody actually hits all the check boxes, which is the point. They are Luddites because they cause us to slide backwards and die. Yeah. Well, and the whole society, like the whole thing. Like, and it's all based on this idea that like, yeah, we don't need to make a plan. Plans are for chumps. The only thing we need to worry about is that the wealthy don't grift each other. That the wealthy talk to one another and be like, okay, we're not going to grift you. You don't grift here. Okay, how do we not grift each other? Okay, but we got to split up the populace. Like, we got to grift the populace as much as possible and make as much money from them as we possibly can, right? Yeah, of course. So in this way, like, the American political system exists to just decide how to split up the spoils. Like, that's it. It's just a group of people deciding how to plunder the populace. That's what the political system is for in America. Oh, perpetual anger not working for conservatives. Oh, no shit. This is an article by Craig Wallace. Before the September 2021 federal election, the Conservative Party war chest stood at over 13 million. Despite a massive media campaign, however, the end result was the Conservatives failed to win. It was the same story in the election campaigns of 2019 and 2015. Even with far stronger financial resources than their opposition, the Conservatives failed. Why? First, it's important to remember Canadians are not overly political. A 2006 study by Office of the Privacy Commissioner of Canada indicated that only 1 to 2% of all Canadians belong to a political party. That is the lowest in any Western democracy. Another sign, how many political radio or TV shows do we see in Canada? Do we have the Canadian version of Tucker Carlson or Sean Hannity? Are there Canadian-based satellite radio stations like Progressive or Patriot Radio like we see in the United States? The answer is no. There would be little desire for such products and or personalities in Canada, otherwise the market would have jumped all over for it. Yeah, that's one thing that's nice about being in Canada. We won't let these insane psychopaths go on like television. And honestly, this is a bit disingenuous because a big reason why we can't have a Tucker Carlson or a Sean Hannity is because we actually do have laws against distributing outright lies into the society. Like, unlike America, where you are free to say whatever you like on the national airwaves and face no consequences whatsoever, here in Canada, if you show yourself, if you say that you're a news site and then just start distributing outright lies, you can face legislation. We don't let that happen here in Canada. That is actually the reason why Tucker Carlson or Sean Hannity doesn't show up here, because the only way that those guys can exist is by being fraudulent liars. And they admit it. Like, Tucker Carlson has argued in court that he should be allowed to say as many flagrant lies as he possibly can. But here in Canada, we don't let that fly. We genuinely believe that we should at least be attempting to tell the truth. Who knew? That's why the propaganda that happens here in Canada is more about omission, right? Like, it's not a lie, right? It's technically, like, it's not misinformation. We just didn't include important things. Hey, Barnabas, how you doing, bud? Good to see you. All this means the Conservatives need to really focus on the small percentage of people who make up much of their base and who are highly engaged. And the best way to do that is to create anger and outrage. What better way to whip up your base and raise money than to allege that the Liberals will take away your guns, force you to be vaccinated, push various forms of sex education in Canada. The small group of Canadians who get riled up by this respond by sending in huge amount of money to the Conservatives. But to what end? The problem for the Conservatives here is most Canadians are socially liberal, or, most Canadians are sane. I think that that's a more important thing to say. Like, the reason why the Conservatives cannot gain support in the populace is because we're looking up and they're saying don't look up. And it is that clear. Like, the fact that the Conservatives are not acknowledging the existence of climate change. Yes, Aaron O'Toole acknowledges the existence of climate change. Their base does not, right? That's enough. Like, we're not going to move forward with these guys. Like, they're pretending like the comet's not there. Get fucked. Like, get completely fucked. What engages the Conservative Party base and convinces them to donate money turns off the majority of Canadians. Yeah, fascism does turn off the majority of Canadians, it seems. If you disagree, then answer this. Why has the Liberal Party governed more than 70% of the time throughout Canadian history? The answer is actually that the Liberals are better liars. That is the actual answer. Like, Conservatives are weird in this way. Like, they genuinely believe what they say, even though what they say is the most destructive, psychotic shit that can come out of a person's mouth. But they seem unwilling to lie about it. Right? That's what makes the Conservatives actually very interesting. That, like, what they believe is reprehensible, disgraceful, and disgusting, but they refuse to lie about it. Which is interesting to me. Like, why was it in the last federal election. Like, why wasn't Aaron O'Toole just lying his ass off? He had all of the opportunities in the world to just lie his ass off. Trudeau told massive lies on stage, on the debate stage, in front of people, right? Remember when he denied that he was fighting First Nations kids in court? And Singh was like, he can't say that. Like, he can't say that. Yeah, he can. No one punishes him for it, right? The reason why the Liberal Party governs more than 70% of the time throughout Canadian history is because Liberals are much better liars. And Canadians are extremely gullible. We are a very, very, very gullible people. Like, we are extremely gullible. Like, I keep talking about these guys. So, Galaxy Quest Gullible Aliens clip. Come on, I gotta find this clip. Like, these aliens in the movie Galaxy Quest, right? These aliens are extremely gullible. Like, they don't understand the concept of lying.
Commander,
Excuse me?
I must speak to you. It is a matter of supreme importance. We are Thermians from the Klaatu Nebula, and we need your help.
Is this about the gig tomorrow? Just hammer out the details with my agent and make sure there's a limo at my house. Last time I did one of these gigs, they shoved me in the back of a Toyota.
Anyway, these aliens, right? The whole story of Galaxy Quest. The whole story, first of all, that's Dwight Schrute. There he is. The whole story of Galaxy Quest, right, is that these aliens were beamed the story Galaxy Quest, which is Star Trek, right? But they don't understand, like, narratives, or they don't understand, like, lies, right? So when they see it, they actually thought that it was real. And so they approach the actors who are doing, like, the convention circle in order to help them. And the problem that they're facing is that there's this evil guy who keeps attacking and destroying them because he keeps lying to them and then betraying them. And because they don't understand the concept of lying, they just keep falling for the same shit over and over and over again. These are liberals. Like, these guys are liberals. If you are voting liberal, you are these guys. Gullible, like, nice enough. Like, they're nice. Like, don't get me wrong, they're nice. But they're just extremely gullible. They don't even understand the concept that they could be lied to. Like, and so that's the reason why there's fucking 70% of the time throughout Canadian history. CPP premiums are going up. Of course they are. What else is new? To know the history of Canada, follow the Hudson's Bay Company as well as the East India Company. Follow the money? Yep. Absolutely, dude. The other problem with this strategy is constant anger is exhausting. Think of how draining it is for us as individuals to be engaged in constant angry dialogue. Canadians are a pretty positive people, and they don't want to see angry politicians all the time. The proof of this was in the 2015 federal election. Then Prime Minister Stephen Harper was coming up in his 10th year in office. Many Canadians would agree his administration was competent, if somewhat uninspiring. But Harper seemed to be perpetually angry, and his administration seemed to be engaged in endless petty fights with scientists, bureaucrats, immigrants. I mean, that's all true. But the reason why I never pegged Harper for angry, honestly. But his administration was always engaged in endless petty fights with scientists, bureaucrats, and immigrants because conservatives are deluded, right? The reason why they're in petty fights with scientists, bureaucrats, and immigrants is because those people are telling them the truth and they don't want to hear it. Like, that's what's going on there. Canadians did not find to their liking, and they turned their back on an overall capable government for Justin Trudeau's sunny ways vision. They keep using this sunny ways shit. And I'm just like, yeah, anyway. Politics in the end comes down to selling people and or ideas. If you walked into a store, would you purchase a product if the salesperson spoke to you in an angry tone or shouted at you? So why is the Conservative Party so intent on selling itself as a potential new government by using anger to an electorate that isn't angry and doesn't wish to be so? I gotta tell you, the electorate is angry. Like, I don't know where this guy fucking lives. Like, for real, I don't know where this guy fucking lives. Craig Wallace is a Hamilton resident and author of 5 books. His 5th book, Canada in Pieces. Like, dude, Canadians are angry. Like, we're fucking upset. The reason why the NDP can't get anywhere is because they're not galvanizing that anger. Like, I don't know why we're pretending like Canadians are, like, completely, like, people are fucking mad, dude. Like, anyway. The Conservatives need to decide as to if they simply want to remain a very wealthy opposition party or if they want to be a legitimate government in waiting. If it is the latter, they need to dial down on the anger and work harder to inspire Canadians with positive ideas. It would simply be good if the Conservatives started to at least acknowledge reality. That would be like the number one thing, right? At least lie about it, like the Liberals do, right? At least lie about it. Anyway. When France fights extremism, it is carrying on checks on Islamic places of worship suspected of having links to extremism. When China fights extremism, it's cultural genocide. France shuts mosques in Bellevue after imam accused of inciting hatred and violence. The NAP federally is invisible right now? I don't know what that means. Oh, the NDP. Yeah. No, I mean, like... No, the NDP is not invisible right now federally. In fact, the NDP actually does have a great deal of power at the moment. Because the Liberals can't get legislation through without either the Bloc or the NDP, right? And it's not a good look to work with the Bloc, and it certainly wouldn't be a good look to work with the Conservatives. And so the NDP kind of end up being the only place where the Liberals can turn without alienating a huge section of their own base. And that actually does give the NDP a great deal of power. And whether or not the NDP is actually going to use it or wield it, to be determined. Tweet I saw, the CDC shortening isolation time to 5 days should be taken as evidence about how quickly U.S. businesses would collapse under a general strike. Yeah, I saw that. No, I mean, but we know that's true. Capitalism is weak. Like, the only thing that's keeping it going is our compliance. That it wouldn't take that long. Like, take a look what happened with the Kellogg strike. Right? The Kellogg strike was over in less than a month. Right? If there was a general strike, if everybody stayed the fuck home and just said, get fucked, right? We're not paying rent. We're not paying any of this shit. We're not participating in this anymore. Serious shit would happen. Serious shit would happen. And it would happen fast. Like, we should stop participating. And we should stop participating until the means of production are transferred into the hands of the working class. Very straightforwardly. Like, this system is a death cult. The comet is going to hit Earth. And the thing that is propelling the comet forward is the system of capital. We've got to stop. Like, we've got to stop. And it's getting to that point where it is coming down to the people. Like, our leadership is incompetent. And many of them, I think, want to destroy the place. Like, many of them, I think, really are in favor of the destruction of the species. With that happy note, we are at the end of it. Good night to you, onward. Godspeed to all Brandons. God Brandon us, every Brandon. What a time to be a Brandon, eh? Shitty time to be a Karen. Not too, sort of depends where you're standing, I think, to be a Brandon. Like, if you were a Republican and your name was Brandon, you'd be like, yeah, let's go Brandon. But if you were a Democrat and you were a Brandon, you'd be like, fuck, goddamn shit. Right? Every single time somebody just says, let's go Brandon, you're like, oh, fuck. All right, guys. We've reached the end of this one. Am I ever happy you guys are here? I gotta tell you, I know that many of you are just lurking today. I know that there's lots of people who are just silently in the background. Thank you so much for being there, you lovely lurkers. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. $1 to the Patreon would be absolutely wonderful. If you're already donating $1, maybe think about making it $2, right? Every little bit helps. It takes 1,000 raindrops to make a storm. Always remember, guys, each and every one of you is a quantum being, walking around in quantum energy. These billionaires are doing everything they can to make sure that you simply do not realize it. Because if you do, you might start thinking you're just as important and as valid as they are. Fuck them. Rebel. Revolt. Repent. Good luck. We're going to need it.